Welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The ensuing show will change, transform, and otherwise alter you. Good luck.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Losers Club, the Stephen King podcast, presented by Bloody FM, the #1 horror podcast network in the world. I'm your host, Michael Monroeville Mall Rothman, still hanging around Lisbon Falls, Maine, where I'm nursing a fresh, cold root beer from Frank's Kennebec Fruit Company. Love those mugs from the freezer. And waiting for my pals to return from the red and white supermarket. Once again, it's Tuesday, September 9th, 1958. Only this time, we promise to make things work. I got a nice cut and shave from Bombers. I even secured a checkbook from Hometown Trust. And I purchased a Ford Sunliner from Bill Titus over at the Titus Chevron. Why? Because we're spending a little more time in the 50s this episode as we continue our journey through Stephen King's 11/22/63. This episode, dubbed Part 2, The Janitor's Father, will see us spend the fall up in a very familiar and very dear place to us losers, Derry, Maine. What are we doing in our alma mater, our hometown, the place from which we sprung? Well, there's been a murder, or at least there will be, and we're the only ones who can stop it just in time. When is that? A few weeks up ahead. My favorite holiday, Halloween. We've got plenty of time to bide, and it wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable without some company. So my constants in this journey with me, whoa, look, they're coming up the road right now. They're back from the red and white, holding a bag of what appears to be sweaters, judging from the wool spilling out of that top bag. Jen, say hello and tell us what you've been buying here in Lisbon.
Hey, this is Jen No Suspenders Adams, and
Nice.
yes, I would be buying sweaters
You would.
by the armful. Most of them gray, but yeah, I would love the opportunity, like seeing how much hats cost. Like I could buy so many cool sweaters and then take them back, and it's not too many, because you can never have enough. But also, you reminded me, I would want my other obsession between sweaters and sweatshirts is mugs, and I love mugs. I have a whole cabinet in my kitchen that I call Mug Heaven, and Corey always rolls his eyes and says we have too many mugs. But like,
Mug Heaven?
I call it Mug Heaven, yeah, because it's like 3 shelves all full of mugs, and they're all mine.
That's cute.
And
yeah.
Corey has his 2 that he uses, that he's allowed to use. But yeah, like I wonder if there are like Kennebec Fruit Company mugs. If like,
There has to be.
because I'm picturing like a glass stein, but then like. You're right. It could be like a really cool, because the best mugs are big mugs,
Yeah. Do you like to have a mug and then get mug root beer with it? Like, does it add the marriage there?
It does. I mean, it's usually coffee, but yeah, I also really like, especially if you put some ice cream in there.
That's true. Yeah, some root beer floats, as good old Frank would call them. So I wanted to say something about the sweater thing, because I realized this is, maybe just a forewarning to any of the listeners out there. So I fall in love with sweaters myself, and I bought a sweater in September at J. Crew Factory. Loved it, and wouldn't you know, a good 6 weeks later, because I was like, I should have had another one of these, because I kind of not stained it, but I got some coal on it when I was fixing something in the house, like coal.
When you were like doling out presents for bad children.
We have a
Working on
million.
the locomotive. Yeah.
I was coming back. I was actually on the rooftop and dancing around like my boy Mary Poppins. But we have a ton of candles here, and I didn't realize that the shelving I had some of the ash on it, and it got on my sweater. And so I was like, oh, I'll just get a new one from J. Crew. And even 6 weeks later, no sweater, they're all gone. And you can't get them online. They just vanish. So if there's anything that you have to hold on dear
Yeah.
other than your loved ones. I would say if there's a line of clothing that you appreciate, get it in multiples at that moment, because like our boy Jake Epping, it will vanish into the thinny after apparently 6 weeks. I was blown away, but anyway. So yeah, I think you're right to grab a bunch of sweaters back there.
Oh yeah.
If they were gone in 6
colors.
weeks,
exactly,
60 years, it's done. Over.
They're not going to
years.
go bad. You know.
No, they're not going to go bad at all. I wonder if if people would notice that you had old sweaters. If you brought them back to 20, you don't think so?
Because my high school days were, I was deep in my grunge era, and all I wore were like old man sweaters from like the 60s and like thrift shop jeans, you know? So like, I think even if they are old, they're vintage, you know?
You just said your grunge era. So what grunge band would you accidentally sing, even though it's not in this section in the story, but you're driving around, you start singing some lyrics to, a grunge song. What's the band for you?
Well, first of all, I don't want anybody to yell at me about if this is actually grunge or not, but I think like I would not be able to hear the name Buddy Holly without singing Weezer's Buddy Holly. And then I would just launch into the whole album, you know.
It's like a perfect album. I'd say it's on the cusp there. You know, I do lump them all in. It's like the beginning of 90s alternative and all. So it makes it.
Yeah, so I guess it's a little more alternative, but that was as grunge as I ever got.
Well, speaking of grunge, we've got a pack of smokes I'm seeing in the hands of our next constant. Dan, say hello and tell us what you picked up from the Jolly White Elephant.
This is Dan, Yellow Card Man Flieger.
Oh, nice.
I couldn't really come up with not Ryan Key from the band Yellow Card, which I think Jen made that joke last week. But the one who's deteriorating before our eyes, that Yellow Card Man.
Yeah. So you got the yellow card from now the orange card man. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Not Vinnie Jones, the soccer player who got a lot of yellow cards famously, but the Yellow Card Man that sort of lingers around the gateways of time.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
And I guess I would pick up a typewriter and I would be writing Hollywood scripts based on, Forrest Gump, I guess DNA. I could do Jurassic Park script. And I would just linger back in time and be this like ahead of its time screenwriter.
You're like a nerdy Hollywood. Biff, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like
instead of like placing
Biff.
bets.
It's funny.
I'll bring every Oscar winner back with me and just be like, this guy, he wrote about things that haven't even happened yet. He was so ahead of his time. You know?
And then you'd get like a lawsuit from Friedrich Meischer, who's like,
I'd probably get mixed up in the studio system and like they would find me in the trunk of an old 50s car. But
yeah,
be a good ride while it lasted.
Scorsese would probably make a movie about you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Goodfellas, and they're like, Latanza Heist hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah. Or you're like writing this, trying to think of like a script that would be so modern, like, oh, The Matrix. And you're like, oh, I remember
Minority Report. Yeah.
People are like, what the fuck is this?
What is a touchscreen?
Yeah. So you mentioned, typewriters. Have you ever owned a typewriter in your entire life?
When we were little, my mom had an electric typewriter. So like in elementary school, she used to type up my reports sometimes, but it was such a clunker. I don't know. I would love to have like an actual old fashioned one with because I'm very tactile. So I like the clicking of the keys.
Yeah.
I know Conan O'Brien and Tom Hanks collect typewriters because they write handwritten thank you notes, which I think is a very
cool.
Charming hobby to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like the one, like the prop from The Shining. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
You know, who wouldn't want that? Well,
have you seen in the collection, when you buy, what's the name of the big collection that just came out recently for The Shining?
Oh, the Taschen?
They actually give you the pages of all work and no play typed out exactly. That comes with the package, which is so cool.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought of, there was actually a moment in at 2 or 3 in the morning where I was looking at it when it first dropped and I was like, can you do this? They don't have Afterpay on this. They don't have Klarna. Can you just actually click enter and then just figure it out later on down the road? And I was so close to getting it, and I was like, I can't. I don't.
Probably
think
not a good impulse buy.
It's not.
I would stick to sweaters.
Buy. Yeah.
I would stick to a second sweater, Mike.
I agree.
Can't wear a typewriter.
Well, as we said in the first episode, we've got our constants, as you just met, Jen and Dan Flieger. In today's episode, we have another special guest loser that's coming around the dry shed. She's got shades on that scream sunny Los Angeles and red hair that matches our sunliner. Julia, say hello and tell us the first time you were around these parts, specifically the novel 11/22/63.
I am Julia. I got Moxie Marquesi. And I've been in Derry. The first time I was in Derry was when I was 11. So, I've been here around for a very long time. But 11/22/63 actually has a very special place for me because my father very famously does not like horror at all and has never read any Stephen King at all. So I was like, okay, here's my in. I was like, okay, Dad, this is a history one. Like you can get into, he was, he remembers JFK's death very well. This is a very important thing in his life. So I got to get him to read, this is a big ask, right? This is a big book. This is a lot of pages. And Dad did it. And we read it at the same time. And it was great to be able to. And he kept being like, who is Jim Law? What is Jim Law? Like yelling it. It was very great. So this book has a warm place in my heart because I got to read it alongside my dad.
Where would you say, since we don't do final thoughts in these episodes, I mean, we'll probably have a roundup towards the end of everyone that's been on, but was this like an instant classic for you when you first read it?
I think it's tremendous. And I had never realized I would know so much about Lee Harvey Oswald in my life. I know, for my dad, it's like learning about the Stephen King time travel stuff. For me, it's learning about the history stuff because I know the basics, but I didn't know the in-depth, and it's so well researched. So I thought it was kind of a bonus that you get to get your history lesson alongside your Stephen King.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked a lot about how King was sort of had this attempt to rebrand himself in the last episode when he was marketing and pushing this book. And it really wasn't a surprise to me that he was doing like a time traveling drama, because I think by this point we were kind of aware that he could flex his dramatic muscles, especially with like just the movies that had been adapted from his work, even at a ubiquitous level. Was this a surprise to you? Like, was this historical swerve? Did it just feel like, oh, this seems like another entry point for King, or did it really feel like a rebranding to you?
I guess I always am open to any direction he wants to go in, right? Because, reading the Dark Tower series, he goes in every direction all at once. So you just go, okay, and you just kind of follow along with where he's going. And I think he makes such a likable character out of Jake so quickly that you really are on board with him and feeling the uncertainty and the scariness of what he's going through very, very viscerally. And I think the writing in this is some of his best writing.
I agree. Absolutely. I mean, as you'll hear soon, constant listeners, I feel like the word processor is going to be very long in this episode. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon before we're done with this series. I wanted to ask though, too, I know, one of the things that we share is a love for vintage, a love for, the throwback styles. Is 1958 an era you'd be thrilled about, or would you want to be waiting for another decade? Would you go back and maybe wait for a more decade that you're in line with?
Oh no, the 60s are my jam. They always have been. I've been a Beatles fanatic since I was a kid. So like that's the era I definitely want. I love the fashion. I love the music. I love the movies. I would actually like 1963. I would wait till 1963 because that's when the Beatles are in Hamburg, and I would go over and get on the Beatles in their leather pants in Hamburg. I'll speed it up. That's the dream. That's my number one time travel destination.
Which one are you hitting on first?
Yeah.
Stuart Sutcliffe. The original bassist, 100%. He's my love.
Oh.
And then George.
Stuart Yoko Ono.
Oh gosh, man, let's not even get into Yoko. But all the Beatles at once sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'll join you.
Okay, great. It's gonna be a party.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, you get them before they're famous.
Exactly.
So they're more accessible.
So Al's like, all right, Julia, I'm dying. You have to kill Oswald, and you're like, oh sure, and then you just throw out his notebook. Fuck all the
Beatles first.
Well, I take care of Oswald, and then my reward for doing such a great job is the Beatles. That's a great reward, right? It all works out.
That's
perfect.
we joked in the last episode that I would sit there and wait for Caddyshack and all the movies of 1980 to come out, and that would be my goal. But you're right.
I think, to be in Caddyshack?
Oh no, to be able to see it like when its first run, like
that's
all the
your
first
number
run
one
movies.
Time travel destination. Caddyshack?
Because I would love to live in 1980. Like that's my favorite year in pop culture. So I was just joking that like, I would just wait for like 20 something years for that to happen. But I think the Beatles detour, especially since you'd be able to get to see the rise of the Stones and the Who, and oh man, that would be fucking incredible. And
go through the Summer of Love, do all of that, really get into the LSD part of it, hang out with Owsley, like the whole bit. I'm sold.
Would you go to Woodstock?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. If I could travel back in time for anything, it would be to go to Woodstock, I think.
But the thing is that I would be caught because I would have bottles of hand sanitizer from the 40
Exactly.
years beforehand. They're like, what's that?
Like have a backpack full of food and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Bring your wellies. Tell people not to take the brown acid, and everybody
Right.
wins.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just, I wonder if you'd go back and make it so that they do better crowd control. Like, there's going to be like 1 million people that are going to flock here, and you got to do something about this. And they'd be like,
that's
get out
the
of
problem.
Here.
Problem with time travel is no one will believe you.
No, that's the
Well,
truth.
and would it ruin
logistics coordinator?
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, if you're going to do that, you should go back to Woodstock 99.
Oh,
and
yeah.
their crowd control.
Oh, just so you can riot? Yeah.
Or Altamont. Altamont would be a better one to
That'd be a good one, too.
Like, hey, guys.
Yeah.
Also,
have a
that would be
problem.
fun to see, too.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
Lord.
we consider hiring Hell's Angels, maybe, guys? Just
There's some red flags here you should probably pay attention to.
Maybe you could join the Hells Angels. It's
Ooh.
although I hear their entrance
it's a dream.
period is pretty rough, but
Could be an old lady.
yeah, that's true. I mean, here's the thing: if someone went back and managed to safeguard all of the Woodstocks, I imagine the Woodstock brand would still be alive and well and wouldn't be in limbo. Like for its 50th anniversary, they couldn't even do anything with it. So,
But it'd probably be lame because
It would be
it's
lame,
not
yeah.
dangerous,
I know.
It'd be like your granddad's Woodstock,
it's like when you go to concerts now and you can't do anything and everyone's
Mhm.
terrified of leaving their seats, and then you pay for a beer that's the cost of basically third of the ticket. It's really fun. I love where the music industry has gone to.
That's why I
Anyway.
don't go to live shows anymore.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. As I said, I think on the last episode, I think I took out the third mortgage to go see Taylor Swift this year. So it was fun. It was definitely worth it though. But look, we're not here to talk about Taylor Swift. We're not here to talk about Woodstock. We are here to talk about 11/22/63. And I love Lisbon Falls. It's a real city. It's great. They've got some interesting stuff all around town. But we've already explored it. We need to go to another town. And as I mentioned, it's a very familiar town to us losers. It's Derry, Maine. And
Yay.
I got the Sunliner for it. So why don't we just pack all our stuff away in the trunk? The trunk's big enough to put even more stuff. So if you want to get some stuff from the Jolly White Elephant, go nuts.
60 supermarkets are my dream, by the way. Just like looking at
That would be
pictures of
cool.
60 supermarkets and all of the products that don't exist anymore. Amazing.
Just all the colors too. Like everything looked and bounced like crazy. I've been on like a Clint Eastwood kick, and I've just been watching a lot of 60s and 70s movies, and it's just like night and day when it comes to aesthetic between now and then. But look, we'll definitely go to more 60s grocery stores and shopping markets in Derry, Maine. So why don't we get in the Sunliner after everything's all packed and head up to that clown town? But specifically, we got to stop at, I'm sorry, I said we weren't going to be doing history in this episode, but we've got some books to check out in the Derry Public Library.
Mike Hanlon, if you see...
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Tell Mike Hanlon that I had to go, that I had to get cleaned up. Tell him. Tell him I'll see him tonight.
Get out! Last chance, Tosha. Get out! Get out! What a guy.
Well, in the Derry Public Library, again, like I just said, we usually talk about the history of the hook and the structure and format of the book, but we already did that. And you can listen to all of that in the 3-hour plus episode we ran last week in the main feed. Instead, we're going to catch you up on where we're at in the book. And Jen, you're the recap ruler around here. So why don't you give us a little synopsis of the janitor's father? That way we can set the scene for what's to come.
Nice. Okay, so this section begins as Jake embarks on his first major trip back to 1958 to save Henry Dunning. It is Henry, not Harry, right? I have Harry in my head.
Harry.
Harry. Okay. So save young Henry/Harry Dunning. I wonder if Harry's short for Henry. But the young Dunning, who will grow up to be Hop-Toed Harry. After traveling through the rabbit hole, he immediately bumps into the yellow card man, now the orange card man, who is ranting and raving at him, reminiscent of Christie's drinking days. Then he stops at the Kennebec Fruit Company for a root beer and a little Uper talk with Frank Ansietti. Next, Jake gets a 1958 makeover with a spiffy new haircut, a new alligator checkbook, plus a checking account, and a fancy new Sunliner convertible. Then he heads to Derry. And I pictured the whole thing to some kind of fun musical montage, maybe working for the weekend.
Oh, it could be that, yeah. Like
that's what all montages should be set to, I believe.
Like an animated map of him just driving with like his face like smiling, Yeah.
That would be incredible. Jake knows something is wrong with Derry right away. Aside from wandering through Easter egg heaven, most of the people he meets are either unfriendly or outright cruel, especially a man named Bill No Suspenders Turcotte. Jake finally finds a friendly face and learns about the recent child murders that began with the death of little Georgie Dembro. For more details on that whole story, see our multi-part coverage of it. Struggling to find the Dunning family without Google, Jake bumps into a couple of helpful tweens practicing a swing dance on a lawn. Not afraid of this strange man trolling for kids, Bev and Richie seem to recognize Jake from King's Dominion and tell him where he can find the Dunnings. Jake begins to follow Frank Dunning, a charming butcher and, quote, nice man who doesn't live at home anymore. It seems he's also a bully with a violent history that people don't seem to care about because he's also dreamy. And I just wrote, if I only had a nickel. His wife, Doris, got tired of his excessive drinking and abuse, and she kicked him out. And now I'm hearing Lucille say, good for her. Jake learns all of this from a kind man named Chaz Fratty, who seems a little bit too good to be true. When Halloween finally rolls around, Jake comes down with a bad case of the shits. Projecting fluids from both ends, he tries to pull himself together with a couple of payday candy bars and an ominous chat with Mr. Keene. Setting up watch outside of the Dunning house, Jake gets ambushed by No Suspenders, who turns out to be Frank Dunning's former brother-in-law. He believes Frank killed his sister Clara, his first wife, along with her baby, and hid the bodies in the woods. After a couple of tense hours, No Suspenders has a heart attack, and Jake races into the house just in time to see Frank break Doris's arm and split Tugga's head open with a giant sledgehammer. Frank is about to kill Jake when No Suspenders saves the day by impaling him with a bayonet. Jake sneaks out of town with a promise to do better next time, heads up the turnpike, and eventually finds the rabbit hole to take him back to 2011. But that's another story.
It is indeed, and we'll be getting to that next week. But thanks, Jen. Thanks for catching us up.
Sure.
Always love a good storytelling hour at the Derry Public Library, which some of us losers have actually been to, and and it's called the Bangor Public Library, but we pretended it was Derry, and everyone looked at us like we were weirdos. But if you recall, if you go across the street from the Bangor/Derry Public Library, there is a nice little river, and whereupon you might actually, if you go far enough, find the Barrens. And in the Barrens, that's where we're going to find our heroes and villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Okay, heroes and villains. This is, we're going to be talking about the characters of this story. Now, I should note that we're not going to be discussing Derry and its familiar faces until our next section, which is going to be especially bumped up for this episode. In this one, though, we are going to be talking about, as the title suggests, heroes and villains, and who better to start with than our main hero? I was going to say titular hero, but that's not the case. Imagine if this book was just called
Mr. 1122.
I know, Mr. 112263. It's like, what's with the Mr.? And King's like, I thought it would be fun and cheeky, but
I was destined for this part.
I was destined, yeah. So let's talk about Jake Epping, Jacob Epping, / is it George Amberson? Amberson, right?
Mr. Amberson.
Mr. Amberson. My brain says that every time.
Every single time, I swear to God, just the Matrix.
Well,
Mr.
I think
Amberson.
about the Magnificent Ambersons, the
George
Orson Welles movie.
Well,
No.
that's good though, because if you were time traveling, that would stay on theme.
Yeah.
And whereas Flieger, as we mentioned earlier, he would reference the Matrix, and everyone would be like, "We don't even know what a computer is."
Yeah,
get him.
Like, this guy
He's
says
a
"whoa"
witch.
a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
He's genius. Give him the Oscars.
Give him the Oscar. Except, isn't it? We're just done with McCarthyism, or is it still brewing? I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think
it mostly ended in the 50s, I believe.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
Red
Okay.
Scare was kind of coming to an end.
But knowing Derry, there are probably a bunch of people there that will actually still believe in it. So,
Well, and things moved slower back then too, so I feel like things filtered around. Yeah, Derry would definitely be a McCarthyism kind of town.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Jesus Christ. Well, Derry is certainly a character that we're going to be discussing, but first, Jake Epping. So, if part one, a watershed moment, if part one laid out the foundation for Jake, I think this slice of life, slice of whatever, this chapter, this section allows us to spend even more time with him. And what I realized revisiting this is that this is a really smart way for King to get us introduced to Jake even more and to kind of dig into his brain. Because one thing we didn't mention in the last episode is that the structured format for this is it happens every once in a while, but the personal first person. This is told in first person, and so we really do get to kind of learn Jake as the actions go. And with this section, what I love about it is that it's like he's on a stakeout, but we're on a stakeout too. But we're not really just watching what he's watching; we're watching him, and we're learning more about him, which is just really genius narrative plotting for King when you consider that the adventure really doesn't start until the next one. But at least he kind of, wheels us in with a little bit of familiarity by bringing us back to Derry, and then really gives us, the portrait of this character. Jen, what did you learn about Jake from this section?
I actually was looking back through my notes and I didn't really have that much because I feel like I'm just so aligned with this character. Like he doesn't I agree. I feel like we're joining this mission with him. He seems like such an everyman, but not a boring everyman. I love kind of his just like joy in these small moments. I also think it's a really interesting way to kind of compare the 50s and 2011 because he's not like a hippie. He's not overly like outrageous in how he dresses. He probably looks like most of us look right now, and so to have him go back and hear that his hair is still too long, it's really interesting to hear him kind of transform into George. But I think, and I know you have a note about this later, so I don't want to jump ahead, but I think the thing that I really learn a lot about Jake in this story or this part of the novel is hearing him talk about Christy. He just, and then of course that's just something I zero in on just because of who I am, but like he just seems like somebody who's still kind of trying to heal from something, and I think it's really interesting whenever he throws stuff in. But I really enjoy this section because I feel like so much of what we're going to learn about Jake and what we're going to see him do is in connection to Sadie and in connection to Oswald. And I really like this section because it's just him, Just
him. Yeah. Yeah. It's a portrait of a young man, a young time traveler.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the hair thing because there's at one point he talks about how he feels like one of the aliens in a sci-fi movie that's trying to integrate into society. And I think that's such a brilliant comp. Because that's 100% what it feels like when you're reading this,
Well, and the part where he's like nervous if he's going to use a catchphrase too early, like that's the little nuances that I think really put us in the mission with him. Like you were asking us, like, what would I accidentally say?
His language develops so quickly, right? So differently, and especially regionally. So something that I might say in LA in 1958, they wouldn't say in Maine in 1958.
Right.
What would
I like the Fred Willard scene in Spinal Tap too. It reminded me with the haircut when he's like, "Oh, I need to get a trim." They're gonna start thinking I'm in the band.
Yeah,
because I can't imagine Jake's hair was necessarily that long.
But
it was enough to stand out.
Yeah.
And then the Beatles come along and go, "Haircuts, bah,
boom,
it's a mop top."
I remember my dad talking about how in the late 60s they all had long hair, and that really was just the indicator that you were not with the quote unquote pack. That would be the rugged Americana or whatever it was.
Damn the man. Grow your hair long.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exhibiting some disturbing behavior, Mike.
Yeah. Hashtag Gavin Strick. Hashtag Nick Stahl.
James Marsden.
What about you, Julia? Like, what do you take from Jake in this one? Or should I say George?
Either or, right? Same person. I really, really like Jake a lot. I think that he is very smart and very careful. And I think that you'd have to be for this, but he also frustrates me because he waits so long to the last minute. And I that makes me so nervous. So this whole section, like, just do it now. Just do it now. Why are you waiting? Just do it now. And I know he needs to make sure that Harry's theme was correct, that he wasn't making it up, that this really is going to happen. But he gets so much information from so many people about what a terrible person Frank Denny is before he even does this. So I'm just a little trigger happy. So I think if it had been me, I think I would have done it way before the night.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that he is so patient, and I mean, even thinks of the smallest things. Like, there's a part where I think this is when I realized just how insightful he is with just being a time traveler on 136. And he says, one thing was for sure, I had to get out of the Derry townhouse at 1958 prices. I could well afford to stay there for weeks, but that might cause talk. I decided to look through the classified ads and find myself a room I could rent by the month. I turned back to the Lowtown and then stopped. I mean, it's just, that's something that wouldn't come to mind for me. Like, what about you? What about you, Fligger? Would you be like as resourceful, you think, as Jake here?
I like to think so. I'm pretty obsessive with detail.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine Jake doing a better job than Al was doing of blending in and kind of being conscientious of the time period. Al seems a little kind of rough around the edges, and like he might stand out a little bit more. But I do think that Jake really is a stand-in for Stephen King here. I mean, he's 6'4", right? Yeah. Which Stephen King is obviously the teacher writing. But I think this is Jake in the beginning is really exploring and it's getting a lot out of the way of what King would do if he went back in time. So, for example, making note of the soda, having Coca-Cola with the syrup pumped and then added to the soda water. I think there's only one diner in America that does that still. It's called like Lexington's Diner. It's in New York City.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was watching some, travel show and it's like Anthony Bourdain or something.
Yeah.
But I'm sure when King, every few months he would make the trip down to New York City to meet with his publishers and his agents. And I'm sure that he would stop in there sometimes. So I do feel like a lot of this is him kind of doing what King would do if he went back. You started the show by asking us what we would do. And I think this is kind of what King would do, is just kind of take in the old timiness, and kind of appreciate the beginning of some of those, like the Yankee glare they discuss.
Yeah.
Just sort of this old timey Maine as it's kind of forming or at least transitioning into the modern era. I just think like he would have had so much fun just going back and being a fly on the wall.
I think that reading Stephen King would actually help me in this situation because I grew up in Las Vegas and then I moved to Los Angeles. So I've only lived in big cities where you're ignored everywhere you go. Not used to a small city like Derry where everyone knows your business. But having read Stephen King and read about small town Maine, then I could go in and be like, oh, okay, here's the deal. I understand. And I feel like going to Bangor as a big city person, I felt like that. I was an outsider immediately. I would walk into a store and before I even open my mouth, they'd be like, oh, where are you from? Because they can tell immediately. So it's something like you can't really hide. They know you're an outsider from minute one. So you have to watch your steps so carefully.
Which makes me wonder. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the Derry section, but like it is just such a perfect setting for all the things that he wants to do here. Because you're right, Julia. I mean, if this wasn't a city, he could have probably taken out Dunning in that day and been like, all right, you're done. Bye. Like he's in an alley. Boom. No one's going to think otherwise. But there is not only just the fact that there is that small town eye, but the particular Derry small town eye where it seems like everyone's or something's always watching you. Which is something I really got out of this section too, is just that pervasive feeling of being an outsider. And which is so smart when you consider the fact that the characters in it are all outsiders. And we get a true outsider in this sense and what this town really does to something like that. And I don't know, I think that's one of my favorite parts of this section is just seeing how Jake is observing these forces at hand, with whether it's the time, whether it's the evil of Derry, or whether it's the townspeople. And it reminded me, it's weird, it reminded me so much of like Halloween 3 almost. Like when they go to like the factory town and all, and it's just like everyone's just fucking aware that like something weird is happening and no one's really saying anything, and they're all knowing the outsiders that roll in. And there's a stillness to the town that I think is really haunting. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, at this point in the second section, I'm all in with Jake. This isn't a situation of King's work where the protagonist is secondary to the hook. Like in this case, like I'm actually more intrigued at like what Jake needs to do and what he's about. as opposed to maybe the surroundings. Am I alone in that? Jen, what do you think? Are you more obsessed with like the details, or are you really interested in Jake at this point?
Definitely more Jake. And I particularly like watching him experience everything, because I do think you're right. It tells us so much about him. But yeah, it's just all these tiny little details. And I feel like I love the scene where he just kind of walks out into the field and he's just kind of experiencing. And like we recently moved outside of Nashville to a pretty small town, which technically is more of a suburb, and Nashville is not the biggest city, but it's just like the sky feels bigger, and I feel like King just really captures that with Jake, and there's this really, really likable innocence that he has, and I also think it's really interesting, Julia, I agree. Part of me is like, kill him. He's going to do this. And I mean, I know like narratively we need to see that Halloween scene. But I also think it shows us how scared he is, because it's almost like he's creating reasons not to do this and to put it off until it almost bites him in the ass or almost kills him. And I think that kind of tells us what a good person he is too, because he is, even though this person is a piece of shit, and what we know and what he knows about what's going to happen is like, yeah, kill him. He sucks. But also I think he's afraid, and he knows he's about to cross a really big line. And I think he's nervous about it because he's already feeling like an alien. And I feel like there's this part of him that feels like, once I do this, there's no going back,
Yeah.
Now you're a killer.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which, I mean, and it's justified. Like I would do exactly what he does, but I also would probably do exactly what he does. I'd probably wait and wait and wait until I couldn't not do it anymore, because I love the part where he's like, one of the reasons is, could I actually do this? Could I pull the trigger? Because I think and that's what I think separates this protagonist from, or King from any other writer, really, is that there's just so much nuance that goes into how he's thinking through this. Because like, I don't know, I was thinking the way I would actually get caught is I would bring like 10 books with me that hadn't been published. Because I was like, well, I'm going to be sitting in this hotel room. Finally I can catch, I'm like the guy from the Twilight Zone who like is about to break his glasses. I can finally read them all, but they hadn't been published yet. But like, thinking about how much time he has to kill, like it's essentially like a Castaway kind of situation. Like you have to have a really strong protagonist to carry this section of the novel where he's essentially just waiting,
And you have something against like Roland, right? Who wants to kill, would kill immediately and not think of it, as opposed to someone like this who's going to wear everything that's going to happen and spool forward to see what consequences this motion has.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like Al maybe should have recruited a soldier that had frontline experience killing, because it would have been a lot easier. Because this is, Jake is building up to his first kill. And it's one of those things of even going back to kill Oswald would be like, well, that's years away. I don't have to worry about that right now. Whereas a more experienced killer like Roland, for example, like you said, would just go back there and be like, bang, bang, done.
Or Billy Summers.
Let's go back and see how it affected things.
Billy Summers.
Yeah.
Or a machine. What if he goes back?
Oh my God.
To 1992 and he's like, I got it. I got the perfect guy for this. But I was also thinking like another, like a bizarro version of this, or maybe the Bachman version is, what if like Ace Merrill is the person that he chose to go back?
That would be amazing.
Cool? I prefer this book, but
that would be like
an interesting short story.
Getting the Back to the Future 2 point of view of like when Biff goes back, and I guess we do get that in the sense of Marty following him in the second one. But yeah, I always do wonder about those what ifs. There's guys, they were just talking about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves recently on the Rewatchables, and they said that like Ridley Scott's original, well, the Robin Hood that came out in the 2000s or whatever, the original like purpose of that remake was supposed to be from Nottingham's point of view. And I think they just kind of balked at it and were like, oh, let's do another rehash of Robin Hood. But I do like that like mode of storytelling a lot, like the Rashomon aspect of it all, where you can kind of just see the other side of things. So I
like
honestly,
Twilight from Edward's point of view, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Christian Grey's point of view.
Yeah. Or like Wicked,
Yeah.
from Elphaba's point of view.
Well, I know a lot of the more recent novels, especially part of like the book talk stuff, just because with Sammy's being a big part of that now, that's a huge component, is being able to kind of shift the point of views that you don't normally see. So I think a fucking story where like Ace Merrill does come back would be, or at least goes through something like this and is tasked. It would be kind of fun to see this as from the villain's point of view. But
I would like to see it from Dunning's point of view. Like,
yeah.
What is he thinking? Why? How is this justified in his mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he could do a short
dark.
story for that. Maybe one of the stories in You Like It Darker is about Frank Dunning.
Or you know how there's like the world of The Stand coming,
Yeah.
What if we get a sequel that's like the world of 11/22/63?
Hey, I'm all for it.
I'd read it.
So some things that Jake does, I want to ask you all if you think it's, a good idea or a tad reckless. The first one is the very Psycho-esque moment when he's behind the motor court and he throws the cell phone in a lake. Is that enough? Like, you don't think anyone's going to find this thing at the bottom? Like, it just feels like this is a huge time traveling contraption. Like, if someone stumbles upon this, I think it kind of breaks some brains a little bit. Like, what the fuck is this? And then it becomes this whole thing, and then the government has to become a part of it. Like,
Or the shop.
Or the
What
shop.
if, like,
Yeah.
Everybody in the town suddenly has all these crazy ideas and all this really great energy. Like, what if this is the genesis of Tommyknockers or like hate, that would be cool. But yeah, I agree. And like, also he has lost his phone forever now. Like he can't go back to 2011 and still have a phone, right?
Yeah. I think there's a part of me that was like, I think that was a little preemptive. I mean, I guess if he was worried about being searched and all,
yeah,
makes sense.
But why would he bring his phone back?
I think he forgot. I think he didn't realize it was in his pocket. You just smash it to bits first.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
then
I
you
would
can
do.
throw it into a lake.
Throw it in the lake, and like Steve Jobs is scuba diving, and it's like, what's this? Hits his head. Like,
I think you have to eat it. You have to break it into a million pieces.
Slow by, yeah. But then he like gets in, and it just like breaks his intestines, and he dies in like the 50s. Like,
or you sneak it into the food in Derry, and everybody else eats it.
Like fried green tomatoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which everybody remembers as this like really happy, heartwarming like movie, but it's actually about cannibalism. It's like this terrible Sweeney Todd thing that no one remembers. When I bring it up, they're like, "Wait, what? Cannibalism?" I'm like, dude.
I did forget there was cannibalism in it. I do love that movie.
Doesn't the guy like lose his foot on the train track in that movie too? Or it's like
the kid, and they bury it, but it's a switcheroo because you think he died.
Yeah. Well, spoilers. For
Sorry.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Sorry, it's about cannibalism.
I just know the joke from The Simpsons when they're like, "What's your favorite book, food, and movie?" Like the answer to all three is fried green tomatoes.
It is a good movie. I like it.
Yeah, it's a cute
cannibalism
film.
And all.
Yeah, with the cannibalism.
Cute film about cannibalism.
Cutest little film about cannibalism the 90s ever brought us.
Okay, so we are pretty much in agreement that Jake should have disposed the phone in a different way.
Yeah.
What about the stakeouts? Do you think he's playing a little too close to the fire at some points? Where he's.
I think we're looking at it from a 2011 point of view, where everyone's paranoid. Right? Nobody's paranoid in 1958. No one's locking their doors. No one thinks about that kind of stuff. So I think he's probably fine in 1958 because nobody's really paying attention to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think if he shows up at these bars, I mean, it makes sense in the sense. I mean, they talk about this in the book, I guess, where it's like these are places that the men hang out at anyway. Why wouldn't an outsider, hang out in that respect? What do you think, Flager? Do you think that he should have? Do you think it was a little too much at points? Where
yeah, he's getting a little close to the fire, but I think it is like that moth to the flame.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help but, I mean, the fact that he's running into these people around town. And again, it's like, we wouldn't have much of a story if he just sniped from a distance and took off. So I get it. And you also, it fleshes the characters out a little bit more. But it really is, this is like an exhibition game for what he's going to be doing with Oswald. Because everything's on an accelerated timeline. The stakes aren't as high. But we start to get this sense of like, this is going to be the MO going forward. Is you do your research, you encounter these people, you take notes, and then you go in for the kill.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Jen? Would you be, I mean, I know, are you a snoop? I know Sammy's a
but
snoop,
I'm not a very sneaky snoop. I would probably get caught pretty quickly, because I just can't help myself. But yeah, it does make me nervous a little bit. Because part of me is like, well, I would just sit in my hotel room and read all those books that would get me killed in the past. But like he does, but that becomes suspicious too. Like so it's really interesting watching him kind of try to find the line between like becoming part of Derry, which he doesn't want to do for reasons we're going to talk about later, and also like staying outside, because he really does have to stay outside of this. I think emotionally too, like he can't become friends with Frank. Like he can't get too attached to this because I think he's still so scared of what he has to do. But also I don't think he knows how, like you can't cyberstalk anybody, you can't just kind of watch from a window like it's a super busy street with like high-rise apartments or something. I'm thinking about like Seven, where he's got like the apartment across the street and he's watching, he can't do that. So I think that's part of the peril here, is like how much should I stand out, and what side is the danger greater, and it's
Jen,
constantly moving,
Have you talked about how different this would be if a woman went back? If you or I went back?
No, I hadn't even thought about
how much
that.
harder it would be to blend in as a single lady just hanging around bars and trying to talk to people.
Oh my God, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. I mean, part of it sounds fun. I just get to wear all these cool sweaters, and hang around and, I don't know, become like a lounge singer or something. But yeah, it would be impossible. Like you could not do this in the 50s period, but probably not in a town like Derry, because you would absolutely stand out. Like what's the agenda? You'd have to come up with this whole, I would probably pull something like in The Breathing Method, where she pretends to be a widow, or, my husband's stationed overseas or something. You'd have to get a fake ring, and his like real estate cover comes in really handy because it's so vague, but you couldn't do that as a woman. Like you would have to, I don't know, be some kind of rich heiress or something, which would attract attention. But yeah, that's a really good point. You could
like
not
Belle
do it.
From Beauty and the Beast, essentially. You're just walking around with your books and everyone's singing.
Yeah.
Look at this Jen, isn't she peculiar?
Honestly,
she's probably going to kill someone.
Not a bad comp, because I feel like Frank Dunning is a very Gaston type.
Yes.
Like he reminds me of Brom Bones of this town too.
Plus
like
all the
Sleepy Hollow.
antlers he uses in his decorating.
Yeah,
and if there was a musical version of this, I'm on board. For sure.
Oh,
same.
They probably could do a musical one of this easily, especially if you incorporated like songs from that era too, which would be fun.
Sondheim has this musical Assassins, right, which is all about people who have or tried to kill presidents. So that's already out there, the musical version.
What a strange swerve on his book. Oh, I guess he always has like a dark side to him though, so that makes sense.
It's amazing if you haven't seen that show.
Is it his newer one?
Recently.
Or really?
Oh, no.
Oh, so it's an older one. Okay, yeah. Well, you mentioned kind of biding the time. I wanted to ask everyone, like, what would you do for these 6 weeks? Like, I mean, Flieger, I imagine you'd probably just finish it up fast and then move on, or would you kind of just enjoy yourself around this town a little bit?
I'd probably be doing what King was doing. I'd be going checking out some of the diners, just like that, taking in all the like Americana that, I was just thinking, so Podcast The Ride did this episode about this diner that used to be at MGM Studios. It's like a 1950s kitchenette diner, and it just all that stuff that we've recreated now, and we think we know what it's like, but I think actually going back and experiencing it would be a totally different experience. Yeah, I don't know, just sightseeing and taking in the local flavor. Anything that I couldn't do in the present time, pretty much.
Would you buy a television like Jake does?
No, because I feel like there's really not that much on TV, and I don't want to go back in time and waste my vacation, whatever, watching television. You know what I mean? Like, if I have to, I'll go to the bar and watch whatever juke joint they got going. But I don't think TV would be a waste of time.
I'm on the same page. I thought that was a bizarre. I mean, I get it because he does have time to kill in the apartment, but like, I feel like I would be out and about like nonstop too. It does feel like such a I mean, maybe in 2011, I can't remember, but I felt like maybe the archives weren't as big as they are today, where you could literally just find anything on YouTube. I feel like it was probably YouTube was still sort of in its infancy. So the idea of being able to watch random things like what he watches on the television every night there might be some sort of, delight to that. But yeah, I feel like, I already get FOMO enough watching television and it's a nice day out, like at home in this current era, that I think back then the idea of buying a television just wouldn't come to mind. But Julia, what would you grab that television, or would you
I'd just be going to the movies. He talks about the movie theater a bunch of times, but he doesn't go in. So for me, it would probably be driving around Maine, going to all the drive-ins and the different movie houses and staying through the double feature and through the next round, watching the double feature again. And, we'll take aside the fact that I'm an outsider in Derry and that I'm a woman and we have to worry about these kind of things, but just driving around and seeing the difference. And even, Derry's not that far from Canada. Go up and see what's happening in Canada. Like there's this whole kind of world around you that you could really be in. But his whole point is to be in Derry, right? So you feel like you wouldn't want to leave. So I think hanging around the library, probably you're not going to be suspicious in a library. I think everybody's like, oh, he's just a academic kind of guy, and that's okay. But it would give you so much time to not only read about what's happening now, but just kind of the general. You get a sense of who everybody is. And I think you can, he does go to the library, but I think you could really look up more about people and really get the sense of Derry, because he does go into and like read about all the murders and everything that happened in it. But which is fun. But really using what you have to do more research, I feel like he maybe doesn't do enough.
I agree. Yeah. It's kind of, he like kind of glosses the surface a little bit with just here's the census, and then walks away. And he has just the story that, Frank Dooley, I think that's his name. Yeah, not Frank Dooley, but the guy that worked Toomey. Yeah, Frank Toomey tells him at the bar, and it's like, oh, okay, and then just keeps walking. If I heard like about all these murders that were happening like the year before, I mean, yeah, I'm right with you. I'm going to the newspaper archives. I want to read all about this shit. I want to visit these houses, but then maybe he gets distracted. And then, as we learn, time might actually have made him do more of that. But Jen, what are you doing to kill the time other than reading books and buying sweaters?
Well, okay. Do you think microfiche was around at this time? Because I love microfiche, and I think that would be really fun. I think I would probably spend a lot of time in the library. I would probably buy a TV, and I would say it's for research, and then I'd just watch, I don't know, something. But I think I would like to, if I were in this town, I would go hiking a lot. I think, I already love hiking. And I think like to see all of this land before it's been developed, I'm sure it's just gorgeous. That's one of the things, like if we ever get to go back to Maine, I would love to go to Acadia, because I've heard it's gorgeous and we just didn't have time to go there.
And they have a very delicious popovers there.
Ooh.
You go there and you get these giant popovers, and they have like the savory you can put on. They have the sweet that you can put on. So you do your hike, and then you go up to the Jordan Pond and get popovers.
Oh man,
well, I want to spend all my time there.
Yeah,
and,
that sounds
and
like
if it's not there, I would establish that business and make $1 billion.
Popovers, goddammit.
Well,
but also eating the food too.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, which he says tastes so much better, right?
Yeah. I think I'd probably be at the diner. I just watched Barry Levinson's Diner again last night, and I just got so nostalgic, which takes place in 1959. I mean, although it's in Baltimore, a lot of the same stuff. I mean, they literally go to the Strand even in that movie, which is very similar to what Jake does here. And I did just get so wrapped up in the idea of being able to have like cigarettes and coffee and whatever sandwiches I want at the diner at whatever hour, and just hanging out with friends there. And there's a lot of social engagements of this era that I still get nostalgic for, because they still were around when I was, in my teens and in my 20s. I feel like a lot of them started dissolving when the world did too, but not that it hasn't in the last 50 years, but just the idea that these social gatherings, these social events, I think seeing what we've seen so far in our lifetimes, I think the creation of the smartphone has just destroyed most of the stuff, because there is just no more socialization in that sense. But I think that's certainly what would key me into this era, is just being able to hear stories from other people, being able to smoke for long nights and inside establishments, and having, shitty food that's probably tastes incredible for you. I think that I would be enamored by it, which is where Jake ends up towards the end of this chapter. He's like, I could live here. This wouldn't be too bad. Let's talk about Christy a little bit. You hinted at it earlier, Jen. What do you get a little bit more in this,
Yeah.
It seems like she haunts him almost, right?
She does, because I wanted to talk about it in our last episode, because I didn't think we would get much more, and I couldn't remember that being a part of the story, other than just kind of when he's telling us that she exists. But it is really interesting to see him kind of encounter 3 different alcoholics, although he's not really, it's more encountering the memory of Christy. But I pulled a couple of the quotes because I just think it's really interesting to read this out of context. Okay. On page 101, he says, the same exasperation I'd felt with Christy when I came home to discover she was drunk, going on shit-faced again, in spite of all of her promises to straighten up, fly right, and quit the booze once and for all. And then later he says, to my marriage to a basically sweet woman who'd almost drowned my love for her in alcohol. And I feel like, kind of going back to the conversation we had in our last episode about if King had written this when he first had the idea, I feel like this is the like reflections of a man who's been sober for a long time, you know, because he still has a lot of pain from Christy, but he also has a lot of love and compassion and kind of understanding. And it just feels like he's coming out of something that really affected him, and it keeps popping up in places, you know. And I think, like, I see King reflecting on himself, but in a way that shows me he's got a lot of sober years under his belt too. Cause like, I remember, I don't know, you kind of go through phases with it, you know, when you first get sober, like you don't want to think about anything you did, which was awful. And I mean, I could tell you all the shit that I did, and you know, someday we might have a tangents episode about all the Jen drunk stories, but like you want to distance yourself as much as you possibly can. And there's this kind of aversion to seeing other people that are still drinking, which I think is really interesting when he encounters the orange card man now, or Frank. And I think seeing him kind of encounter all of these people and pulling from his memories of Christy, because she hurt him a lot, but he also loved her. And I think it's just so interesting to see King kind of reflect on himself. And I think a younger King would have a lot more anger towards Christy, you know, and you can see that, like that exasperation I'd felt when like drunk going on shit face. That's an angry statement, you know, but then that to my basically sweet woman who had just had a disease, that's the part of King I feel like who has been sober enough to give him compassion for himself, for his younger self, and to know it's just, you know, it's just a piece of my story. It's not the whole thing. And I'm rambling a lot, but I just think it's so interesting to see Jake kind of coming out of this, and also to have Christy have left him. So it wasn't like he ended this relationship himself. He's still kind of nursing the wounds of being left for essentially alcohol and then recovery. So.
And it's kind of what we were discussing last episode, where I feel like she was his identity because she was his purpose. And I think that's why he is so aimless and such when we meet him.
Well, and I have a theory too, that's maybe a little tinfoil hat, but I mean, you know, we're talking about the Kennedy assassination, so we got to talk about conspiracies. But part of me is like, cause you know, he also has that, there's the part where he says, I think I remembered a child murder, but I couldn't remember because I was consumed with worrying about Christy. And part of me was like, is that Derry's reach extending even this far? Because the town is so, like, it's got this knack for covering up all of its crimes that Christy's alcoholism is maybe worse than it would have been if Jake didn't have this kind of cosmic connection, you know?
Yeah. Oof, that's creepy to think about. Thoughts on Christy, Julia, and just how it's included into this, not even just this section, but the book as a whole so far.
It's interesting because it changes his opinion on other people, right? He judges now. He judges Frank Dunning for this, and he judges the Orange Kind Band for this. And there's never quite clear, would Christy have left him anyway? Right? Because he asks her to get help. She does get help. She does go to AA. She is trying to work through her problems. So it feels like there could be a happy ending there, but I don't, you know, I know that she meets the guy she leaves him for in AA, but would she have left him anyway? So was this something that just was the outcome, not, either way you slice it? And I think that's probably something that weighs on him, is that what was it? Was it the alcohol? Was it not? And was she just not for me?
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about watershed moments too. Like that was a major watershed moment in his life, and to see how it kind of ripples through the rest of the story, you know?
Yeah, Flieger, where do you remember leaning on this arc as much on the first read? Because it felt, I feel like now that we've gone through his works as we've done so religiously over the last 7 years, this stands out more than it did when I first read it. Was that the same for you? Where it just
I think when I first read it too, I know the timelines wouldn't quite work out, but I almost thought like he would go back in time and try to change it so that his marriage would work better in the future. But on second reading, I'm realizing like it kind of similar to Doom McKee, where it just kind of sets the pace, and you kind of see that failed relationship has kind of left him in a slump. he doesn't seem like he's very emotionally available, right? He doesn't have many things lighting him up. So contrasting that to when he finally meets Sadie, and it's the first time you see him genuinely be like obsessed and joyful, right? Even when he's going back in time, he's looking at it just kind of as almost like a scientist, like observing a specimen. But it's not until he meets Sadie that we really see him kind of get that charge again and that spark. And I think that's also where his character becomes more interesting, because a lot of this is just sort of exposition and setting the pieces in place for, I feel like the novel really opens up once Sadie gets introduced.
Yeah, and I think it kind of leans into what Julia was saying about maybe they just weren't right for each other, Christy and Jake. And like now he did find someone that is on the same page as him, and who knew it would have to be 60 years prior to his existence, but or prior to where he was, maybe not even 60 years at that point. I have to do the math on it, but I know it's over 60 years for us now. But for me, even now rereading it, I did want to debate the fact that I was like, is Christy more of like a totem to lean on, or for King to lean on for all his encounters? Because, it really helps as a narrative device for Jake versus Frank. And it's certainly going to help when he finally meets Sadie. Do we need more about Christy, or do you feel like this is enough, Jen?
I don't think we need more.
Okay.
I think that because this story isn't really about Christy, It is more about Jake's reaction to that, what I would call a traumatic relationship. And, I say that as being on both sides of that kind of dance. And I think this is, my other tinfoil hat is this him kind of like trying to see himself through Tabitha's eyes and kind of maybe find a little compassion in that whole situation. But yeah, I don't think we need more, because I think it does just inform who Jake is. I do like that we get what we do. Like, I don't think we're getting too much either, because if I think of a King protagonist that I have issues with, it's Ben Mears, even though I love Salem's Lot. And we have his wife who's passed away and he's blaming himself for her, but it almost feels like that's just a tiny little piece, and it gives him a little bit more of a personality. But I think comparing these two protagonists, like, it is interesting how this keeps coming up and it kind of keeps pushing its way into his brain, which I feel like would be like that's how it feels. It's like, this is what he's coming from. He's not coming from 2011. He's coming from Jake and Christy and being the responsible party. And so I think it just shows us that this is something that kind of you live with for the rest of your life. And I think once we do meet Sadie and see what she's living with too, it kind of puts that in perspective.
Turn the page a little bit more. Yeah. Julia, I know you're a Ben Mears stan. Are you going to stand for this the slander?
Well, I think it's very interesting how King drops us into Jake's life so late in his life, because this is really Christy's really the only kind of mirror or peek we get into his past. He doesn't go through what his whole experience was growing up until he has reached this age. So he's only giving us a very small amount of what we know his past is, but it's enough to inform, okay, this is why he feels this way about the world. So I think that's neat to not bother with his growing up, because in this case it doesn't really matter. It really matters starting where he is now and going forward.
That's a great point. Yeah. What last question on Jake that I'm going to ask, and this is kind of a what if for all of us. What are the odds that you'd be able to drive from Derry to Lisbon Falls with a head wound that's still gushing blood? Flieger, do you think you'd make it?
As someone who has had head wounds, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I've gotten stitches when I was a little kid in the head. Yeah. Your head tends to bleed a lot more because of the density of the veins under the skull. So head wounds are not usually as bad as they look. They just bleed a lot.
Yeah.
So, and I think, there's a little bit of foreshadowing there of a head wound that happens later in the book. But I'm not sure the exact distances, but I think he could pull it off. He's a big guy. He's got a lot of blood in him, I'm sure.
Julia, what do you think? You having driven through Maine,
I have.
Yeah. So do you think that you'd be able to go through those winding roads with a...
It's hard because there's no lights. It's so dark out there that
Mm-hmm.
it would be hard to, and you're just looking at forest. So I think
Mhm.
that would be very hard to gauge where you were. I think we also have to realize he hasn't eaten anything.
Yeah.
He's thrown everything up with like the last 48 hours, except for one payday candy bar. So you're also running on adrenaline and sugar, which is both going to crash really soon. So I think can you get through with enough adrenaline to get to where you're going?
Yeah.
So that's really all you're counting on.
What about you, Jen?
I think he could probably make it because I think he knows he has to. There's no real, choice for him. Also, I think like that is maybe a good way for him to kind of shake off what he just saw, because one thing I love about driving, and it's a kind of a PTSD thing, is like you're nowhere. You're kind of in transit, and there's this ability to kind of, with every like inch you go down the road, the past goes further and further behind you. So I think that he probably would feel a little bit of comfort in just kind of being on the road, and all he has to do is get back there, and he can kind of like soft process what he just saw, and kind of let his mind kind of go on autopilot because he's got to concentrate on the road, but also kind of let it just kind of work itself through. I think other questions, do we think Harold Lauder would be able to make it through? Or what if he like found all of these like candy bar wrappers on the road back to the rabbit hole? I'm going to pull every King book into this with all of the Easter eggs as much as I possibly can.
This is what losers and constant readers do, right?
That's true. And hey, if there's any section to do it, it is this section of this book too.
It's true. That's true. Because this is the big KD, as we'll get to very, very soon. Any other thoughts on Jake that we want to discuss? No, look, we're going to have 4 more sections to talk about him, but
I do think it's interesting. And Julia, you brought this up before we started recording. Do we think of him now as Jake or George? I think I've noticed myself calling him Jake a lot.
I think he's always Jake because it's just suited him. He's not really George. He's just telling people he's George. Also, would smash. I would just like to say that.
Absolutely.
Well, the funniest thing is after, or at least when we were reading it the first time, I feel like every time we got on the train, Flieger, we were debating who could play Jake, and none of us could ever find a real name. Remember that? Like we were trying to figure out like, who would this guy be? And I mean, in the show, it ends up being James Franco, which I don't think is bad casting, but like, I feel like, didn't we settle on like Jake Gyllenhaal at one point? Or like, it could be...
Yeah. It's weird because I just watched the miniseries in preparation.
Yeah.
And Franco is like a weak part of it, I would say.
Yeah.
At the time it was like, oh yeah, he seems like it, but now he almost seems too young to play that part.
He seems like he's a little established enough.
Like he goes back and he almost looks like younger than Sadie, which is kind of strange. What's funny is now, not that it would work, but I'd just be curious because I watched The Killer recently and like having Fassbender play it, just because I think he really is a chameleon and could lose himself in a role.
Yeah.
But it's a very hard character to cast. I'm not sure who I would pick.
Leonardo? He's got kind of an everyman quality,
Oh,
right?
man. He would be amazing in this.
But he almost looks like he belongs in the 50s sometimes, I feel like. After like Revolutionary Road, I was like, he blended in like too well.
Yeah, it's strange because I believe it's in the next section maybe, especially when he starts talking more to Sadie. Ooh. But didn't they describe him as like, he's not particularly attractive, right? Like he's kind of just average looking. Like
what
he's
about
just
like Jim Carrey?
Jim Carrey in this, when it came out,
like Truman Show Jim Carrey,
or even like
The Majestic, or just I was thinking, more calm down. I think he could. I don't know.
Because I was thinking Bill Hader because you brought up Barry. I think he's got a little bit too much. I don't think he would blend in as much as we would need Jake to, but I don't know.
Well, when he meets Richie would be like, "You're gonna look like me when I'm gonna look like you when you get older."
That would be worlds exploding.
Yeah,
but I remember reading this too and thinking and having no picture of Jake other than like this silhouette, like maybe it was the Mad Men silhouette of not John Hamm, because I think John Hamm is too striking or too much of there's an arrogance to that character that I don't think would fit Jake, but I think I remember just the silhouette of this 50s man as who I was picturing Jake as.
It's funny you mention John Hamm because that's who I always envisioned Frank Dunning.
Oh,
yeah.
Although I do think that the miniseries Jake Duhamel,
Josh Duhamel.
Yeah. I think that is really great.
It's good casting, and that's like one of the best stretches of the the show too.
Yeah.
We'll get there in January when we have our catch-up month, where we're going to talk about all the movies that we weren't able to cover yet. But
well, we should talk about the Orange Card Man, because the casting on the miniseries, I thought that was also great.
Oh, who is
sorry,
it?
you go ahead and.
But yeah, go for it. Like, I mean, do we get an idea on what he's about here? Because the shifting of the colors seems to already kind of influence what the hell is happening at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like when you work like in a nuclear sub or around nuclear power, you have to wear badges that show how much radiation you've absorbed. So I just think of it as like, this is just a card that shows you, the deterioration kind of gives you an idea of like, if this card is deteriorating, that means you've been exposed to this radiation for far too long. So in the miniseries, which we'll get to in January, but Kevin J. O'Connor plays him, and he's the brother from There Will Be Blood, Henry Plainview, if you remember.
Oh,
and I think that's great casting.
God, that's the guy that I was. So he was playing the Yellow Card Man in the first episode. I said that he reminded me of that, and that's probably it was just in my head. Remembered him. It is perfect casting.
Yeah, and he's I think like he's a warning to Jake, and I have some other theories that we'll get into later in the series, but I do think he's sort of, whether he was a person that originally, as he indicates, he went back in time to prevent something, but then the past kind of sucks you in. And even on the on his hat, there's a symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake eating itself, right? And that's kind of, this is what could happen to Jake. I feel like if he gets stuck and obsessed with this idea of going back and being like, well, this time I can make it better, this time I can make it better, but we kind of already know that the past doesn't want to be changed. Yeah. So I get the impression this guy is like, he's kind of like a wino, but I wouldn't be surprised if powers in the Stephen King universe have guys like this placed around a lot of the shifts in time, or the thinnies, or whatever you want to call them, because they just want people to be like, this is what can happen to you. So it's almost like the wino outside the liquor store, just being like, hey, be warned, you can go back and have some fun, but you can also very quickly become like this guy.
Yeah, that's a good comp. Do you think he recognizes Jake at this point, and that's why he says "fuck off, Jimlo"? Like, what are our theories at this point in the book? Like, what do we make of that?
The fact that even the kids from Derry sort of recognize Jake implies that there is some sort of psychic understanding and connection. So who knows if maybe he has made this in other dimensions or other timelines. But I think everyone in the story has some vague, if not like a deja vu kind of quality when they encounter someone from the main story.
Yeah. Julia, I know that you're a big Dark Tower head, also similar to Dan. We got 2 people who love the Dark Tower and 2 people were kind of meh on it, which was unfortunate. But,
how can you be meh?
Yeah, 2 people who got it and 2 people who...
We're going to have like...
Stick to Da Vinci Code.
Take that.
I love the Da Vinci. It's very, it's very avant-garde. I mean, who knew that Da Vinci could do all these things?
I love how there's a cliffhanger every 2 pages.
It's really cool. Dan Brown, I give him the Dark Tower.
Just bring that back in time with you. Be like, will he break this code?
They'll be like, oh, this is sacrilegious. Kill him. Julia, what do you make of the Yellow Card or Orange Card Man at this point in the book? I mean, especially when you're first reading it, did your mind go Dark Tower, or were you?
Not at all. He's such a wild card. If we can use this card thing, casting wise, I would just like to say that I pictured, because I'm a big Russian Doll fan, and Brendan Sexton, the third place horse, who is a homeless gentleman who also has kind of mystical, he knows what's going on and you don't kind of vibes.
Yeah.
So I think he would have done this very well. The thing is that Al has not mentioned an orange card. He's only mentioned a yellow card. So I think that would make me very nervous right away. When the first time I saw him use a yellow card, now he has an orange card. I'm like, oh, okay, something has changed, and probably not for the better, right? Because orange to yellow to red was where you think it would go next. So I think he would make me even more nervous second time around than they did the first time, because something has changed and I don't know what it is.
And it certainly sticks with Jake. I mean, even in Derry, he thinks that he like has that like that feeling we all get when we're driving and we see a cop car up ahead and like your body just jolts. Like, I feel like that's what he gets every time he thinks he sees or he's reminded of the Orange Card Man. And he has
clearly knows something you don't.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to discuss, is just how much are we looking at the Orange Card Man as this reminder for Jake, or I'm just very curious at this point in the story about where King is trying to place this, and like how much he's giving us and how much he's holding back. Because when you think about it, like and this is one of the reasons why I have all the logistics of the time travel under the Orange Card Man, is because I think that he's a well from which King, springs from, like, all the questions about what is actually happening. And some of the things that Jake goes over is the idea that, does each trip reset to all zeros except for him and the Orange Card Man? I think that's a good point. I think, and it makes me wonder, like, in that sense, like, is the Orange Card Man retaining all these things? They made the comp in the first 97 pages to the hard drive, and how, the hard drive, once you reset and delete one of the documents to get a new one. And then it was Jake, I believe, that says that, but they save it somewhere, or it's saved somewhere.
It's like
and
metadata.
And so, like, and that's clearly what the Orange Card Man, as we know from the, like, where it's going to lead to, that's sort of what's happening. So it makes me wonder, like, he has to know Jake at some point, like, they're at least have some sort of idea, or
so who is he answering to? Do you think he's like the Crimson King has sent him, or something to Randall Flagg has sent him to watch over and report back to what is happening? Does he have a master that he's reporting to?
He has to. I mean, there was a lot of
turtle, maybe.
Well, that's the interesting too, because they mentioned that later on, which we will get to. I promise. I know you were all waiting for that, listeners, but it did. There was a debate, I believe, in our Discord to this effect of, like, King saying something along the lines of, like, oh, this doesn't have to do with the Dark Tower, but then someone made the point that, well, it does, because 11/22/63, a door is literally in the Dark Tower. Like, that's one of the doors that's in there. So, and not to mention that a lot of the stuff that's happening, and this does happen, like Dandelo is a monster that is the same as Pennywise. So it has to be in the same fabric. So I would imagine that maybe he's working with one of the breakers. If we're gonna lean on the Dark Tower theory, he could be one of the beam breakers, I guess, or one of the breakers, if that makes, I mean, Fleer, this is where you would have to chime in, because I haven't read these books in, like, almost 10 years.
Yeah,
so
I don't think he's a breaker, but I think that the bureaucracy of the multiverse, that there's probably many different doorways, right? And I think this is just kind of to let Jake know that, like, there are other worlds than these, right? He's not the only one. It's not just him and Al who discovered this one trip in time. And I think the presence of him, you can think that they might have some of these guys around all the doorways, just in case, almost like a night guard. And I think the fact that
who is he reporting to?
Yeah,
I know.
But it could be. I mean, it could be good or bad. We don't really get an indication of who he's reporting to. But whoever is using him clearly doesn't care about his condition, so it makes me lean toward the bad side. But I think the fact that he drinks to forget, but you can't quite forget, and he's his own personal tragedy. And the fact that he lingers so close to the portal, I think that's how he kind of can keep a foot in both of these worlds. But one thing that I feel bad for him is of all the cost cutting they do in the book, giving him a 50-cent piece instead of $1 every time. I'm like, just give the guy $1. Like, that's not, it's like, now to save your money, Jake, I know you're gambling and making tons of money off the past, but don't give him more than 50 cents.
I know. Well, so what happens if Jake is like, decides to be courteous and is like, here's $500? Is the Yellow Card Man going to finally be like, all right, I'm going to live here? He'd probably
drink himself to death in that case.
And then I wonder,
what happens if he dies?
Well, that's a good question.
Do things change?
Yeah. Or would there just be another one to take his place?
Maybe it's Jake. I like this idea of, like, that you're leaning on, Fleer, of just him being like the next, like, grooming him to be the next one, which does feel in line with, like, a lot of King's Dominion stuff. Certainly Clive Barker would do that to his characters for sure. So some logistics that we get in this episode, or at least in this section, and I say logistics just because, as I've mentioned long since the first episode of this podcast, is that once King implies something, it does usually feel like that's kind of the law. And not always, but most of the time when he's implying something, it's like, oh yeah, that's that. I guess that's the rule we're going to go with. So Jake ruminates on the idea that, like, if everything does go back to zero, he starts wondering, and it's on page 161, he says, and one other thing, Harry Dunning's family had already died once. Was I going to condemn them to die a second time, even if each time was a reset and they didn't know? And who is to say that on some deep level they didn't? And that kind of creeped me out. Like, what if there is some sort of idea that, like, there's a string of these incidents in every timeline, it spiritually is, do you think deep down there is some sort of knowledge of like, oh, I've been dead, I've been living, I've been dead, I've been living. Like if you adjust it too many times, is there going to be some sort of, I don't know, fiber that's in their being that could possibly remember some of this shit? Like, is that trauma of these moments going to live on somehow in another future, or are there echoes to be had with that?
Well, and that's like Jake too.
Yeah.
Not this Jake, but
Yeah.
Dark Tower Jake. That he's got this memory of dying, but
Mm-hmm.
he can't figure out what that is. Yeah, I do think about that. Like, just the ripple effects of all of this, and partly because I've already read the book, so I know what's going to happen. But what I think is so interesting about the Orange Card Man is I really hadn't questioned him at all. And if we weren't talking about this, and if y'all hadn't brought up the Dark Tower, I wouldn't think about that at all, because my mind goes straight to alcoholic. He's so like, and pity, and like, oh, I remember, like, I wonder if I ever stumbled around, looking like that. Like I had neighbors that called me the drunk girl, I'm like, oh, well, what if I was like the yellow card Jen, And I think that is what's genius about King using Christy, because I think Jake is kind of preoccupied with that too. Like when he looks at him, it's triggering all of this stuff with Christy, and it's all of these old memories, and he immediately kind of is repulsed by him, but also wants to help him. And it's like these conflicting emotions. And so he doesn't really think too much about what the fuck is this guy doing here, And I mean, there's part of him that's like, this is weird. What is Jimla? But also I think he's so kind of triggered by old stuff that he doesn't start to kind of pull apart the seams before he needs to for the narrative,
Mm-hmm. Do we find him menacing at this point? Because Jake certainly does.
Yes.
Are we? Yeah. So he lingers in our heads too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's ominous,
Yeah,
He's
I
like
guess ominous is better than menacing.
Yeah.
And such a big question mark as well,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
we really don't know how he fits in the story yet. And he's always kind of a mystery, really, I think.
Yeah.
And I had never, like, the Dark Tower stuff never even crossed my mind. So,
Yeah.
and this is someone who looked for Dark Tower stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
all
see,
of
it didn't
his
cross my
books.
mind because I just don't think about it that much. But yeah.
No, it lives on my around my neck every day. It
Well,
stares
because-
me in the face, my Ka symbol.
Because if it's not the Dark Tower, we usually go to Randall Flagg, right?
Right.
It's almost like that was the OG Dark
Yeah.
Tower world for him, because it's like, when you look back at our older episodes, we're always talking about Flagg. Like, oh, is this Flagg?
As you
Is this
should be.
I know. Well, look, I'm a worshiper of Flagg, so, and he's certainly cooler than the Crimson King, but it does, I don't know, there is a lot of what if still here, but I think that King is weaving this in enough where it doesn't overshadow the story in any way. Like when it comes in, the thing I like about this is that he allows there to be some lore, but really what the Orange Card Man comes to represent is just the character of time, and how time is, this obdurate, or the past is this obdurate thing that, I think there's a point where he says that it's like being in a cell with like flexible walls or something like that. Like I fucking love that comparison. And so for me, what I take away from it is that, it starts there as a reminder, like, oh yeah, something's going on here and there are going to be some consequences, but it's really the idea that time is always around him, and that it's watching and it's moving. And as we learn in this one, even Jake starts theorizing whether or not it's fucking with his mind, so that he can't actually even think about things, which is why he starts writing and starts typing, which is King's cheeky way of making Jake a writer again. But
Time's
yeah,
all
go for it,
around
Jen.
us all the time.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right now.
But we are
It is.
about to go into Derry, which
Mhm.
becomes a bigger character than Time. So King is diverting us a little bit and kind of stretching this so that we don't start thinking, what the fuck is this yellow card man? Because we're thinking, oh, Derry,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really, hey, this is a good book, guys.
Yeah.
It's just really well done.
Any other thoughts on the Orange Card Man and Time?
Not about an orange card man, but I thought about somebody that I think would be a good Jake, and that's a younger Chris Pine,
Oh,
Seeing him
Mhm.
kind of navigate all the "Don't worry, darling" drama and kind of staying out of it. It's like,
Yeah.
he could probably
I'm
achieve
not
this
on board
mission.
for that one. He's a little too milk toast for me,
Oh, ooh, I love him.
I'm trying to
You
think.
can have him.
I think
You can have Studcliffe. I'll take Chris Pine.
Okay.
What about Steve Gutenberg? He's on the mind because I was watching Diner. Could he do it?
But have you seen Can't Stop the Music, Steve Guttenberg. That's him, 1980. Rolling around on roller skates in the Village People musical. If you haven't seen that, I recommend.
See, I thought you were going to say, have you seen Tom Selleck? Because my mind just goes to 3 Minute a Baby.
Tom Selleck as Jake would be insane. He's just like, what is this place? It's I already lived through the 50s. I don't need to do this shit and get.
Yeah, like there's a strange man with a mustache lurking. Yeah. Something is going on here.
Where's my badge from Blue Bloods? Breaks character in a novel.
Just carrying around a baby for some reason for most of it too.
Well, Tom Selleck is a real person. All these actors that we're talking about is a real person, and so is our next character to discuss, Frank Anicetti. I didn't know this when I was reading this the first time. I didn't, we weren't doing the homework. We were just reading. I was doing this for entertainment, as Doc Brown says of jogging in Back to the Future 3. And so doing the homework now, it's that I was kind of stunned that King just kind of threw in a real life character. And so I did some research, and so yeah, he's a big figure. I mean, he basically, they called him Mr. Moxie. He passed away in 2017. Sadly, I think he passed away in May of 2017. So we were probably doing like the Dead Zone episode or something like that. So maybe he was a listener. I don't know. I mean, he was, anyway, Mr. Moxie, he launched the Moxie Festival. He was well aware of his inclusion here. And I found an article where he said, do you know that you're in this book? And he had said, the King, he's like, you're kidding me. And so he read it up, and he said, he did a good job of King's description of the Moxie Man. He said he took a little literary license, but he did pretty good with me and with the whole town. So he got the stamp of approval. I just love the idea of a what if, of where he got angry that he was included in this, and he's just like, this isn't me. This fucking book sucks, and just like goes off on King. But no, he apparently was pretty stunned by this, and he said that he knew King back when he was just Steve, quote, an odd, imaginative kid who went to Lisbon High School. He said there were many days when he'd come in and wait for his ride after school. He was a good kid, a little weird, you might say, which I love that he added that. So yeah, he was. It's kind of cool that this character that clearly King, took predilection to, and I didn't realize how much of King was leaning into his childhood here, which is kind of cool. It sheds a light on that. But yeah, he basically, Anicetti, he did transform his Main Street store, the Kennebec Fruit Company, into a must-see destination for the Moxie fans. So it was all Moxie memorabilia and collectibles.
I've been there.
You've been? Oh, so you've been to the store?
Yes, I have.
Oh, interesting. So did it look like what he describes in the story?
Yes,
oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a window in the front that has a bunch of Moxie stuff in it and a bunch of old fruit crates. And inside there really wasn't much of anything. I was expecting like full on Moxie store, like anything you wanted. Yeah. Because I love Moxie and I will gladly represent it. But it was just kind of, there was a lady there who looked confused, like why I was there. And I was like, do you have Moxie stuff? And she's like, not really. And so it's like, okay. So I drove all the way out there for that specifically. And it's I wish I had like been able to really get in there, have a Moxie at the counter, do the whole bit.
Did you get a root beer when you were there?
No, there
was nothing. Oh, bummer. Yeah, that's How far was it from Bangor? Is it pretty far?
No, I mean Maine's not big.
Yeah, so that's
you can
true.
I'm from LA, right? So driving an hour to get to somebody's house is not a big deal for me. Yeah. So this is my time is skewed as far as driving goes, but no, not very far.
Gosh, it is pretty cool how dedicated he was, because even in this article they talk about how the Rumbo textile mill was across the street, and he talks about how it was a grandfather that opened the store originally, and then he became obsessed with Moxie. I like Moxie too. I thought it was good. I thought everyone complaining about it is full of shit. I fucking loved it. I remember getting more bottles when I was there, and everyone was like, "Why are you buying this? It tastes like Robitussin."
Oh no, I buy a case every time I go. First thing I go to the grocery store, buy myself some whoopie pies, case of Moxie to last me for the trip, and I will drink can after can every day. And that stuff has some caffeine. Yeah, it will make you feel good. Yeah, and it tastes better. Because I've read like people who don't like Moxie, it's usually the first sip and they go, "Ew, it's gross." But the idea is you have to drink a whole can, and if you drink a whole can, by the end of it, you'd be like, "Oh, this is delicious." Yeah. But right away, everybody goes, "Oh," because it just is not a taste you're used to.
It's jarring.
Yeah.
Jen, did you ever come around to it, or you're like, no deal?
I feel like it's the kind of thing that I would start to like eventually, but I remember not liking it very much. I'm pretty sure I didn't finish, which, I mean, maybe if I had finished the can. It's like, what is that Chicago thing, Malort?
Oh,
y'all
yeah. No,
have?
Malort is,
You know?
that's the devil.
It reminds me of that. And we have like, Kentucky has one called Ale 8, which is kind of, it's just these interesting little regional things, you know. But yeah, it tasted a little too much like cough syrup for me. Also, I'm not a big soda girl. Like if it's not.
I'm not either,
beer,
actually. Yeah.
then, you know,
I'm a
fuck
soda
off.
junkie, so this makes me very happy.
So is
And
Mo-
just the
cream
fact
in
that
it.
like the word moxie came from that, right? To mean
Yeah.
you have spunk, you have drive, you have ambition, you have like a light that everybody likes because you light up a room. That's
You got
just
flavor,
a nice,
you know.
yeah, you got flavor. That's just a nice thing to know. You're a little fizzy, a little effervescent.
Did you ever
cool, and I'm mad that I didn't get a T-shirt that has Moxie on it or a Moxie mug. You know,
I'm mad I didn't buy more whoopie pies, and that we did buy them, and then we just started all of us eating them throughout our apartment. And we
a
had
little
it there.
whoopie pie goes a
It's
long way.
just a whoopie pie in like every corner of the apartment, and they all were nibbled. And so we probably got COVID somehow in that. But anyway, Flieger, have you ever been able to try it, Moxie?
No, I'm not really like.
You're not a soda guy,
try
right?
brands. I like Mountain Dew. I'm born a Mountain Dew
Yeah.
man. I'll die a Mountain Dew man.
Oh wow.
But I always think like, would I eat this but for it being mentioned in some kind of pop culture thing? So I'm pretty specific with what I want to eat. You know, it has to taste good for me to enjoy it. But,
Maybe you'll be one of the ones who loves it right away.
I know.
I will say, if you go up to a gas station in Maine and you put a whoopie pie and a Moxie on the counter, they will give you a look like you know what's up.
Yeah.
So that's a way to get
Nice.
in good.
Nice.
If I want to impress
the-
the clerks in Maine, I'll keep that in mind.
Hey, that's what
Yeah.
we all strive for, right?
Yeah, I want to feel like a local because I don't want to be
I'm
like an
already
outsider.
talked as an outsider, so I got to let them know that I'm on
Yeah.
the DL. I got it.
I'm one of
I
the good
understand
ones.
what this is about. Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if you added a pack of cigarettes. I wonder what's the go-to choice of cigarettes in Maine, because they don't really discuss them in this. They just kind of say that everyone has cigarettes. So
But from 1958 cigarettes, so
I know.
that's a whole
Yeah.
different ball of wax.
it is adult. Yeah, maybe it's Lucky Strike or something.
It's
But
like Doctor's Choice cigarettes, filterless for more enjoyment.
yeah.
I still have my main pack from when we.
Oh, do you
were there.
really? Well,
Yeah,
save
I
it
haven't
for
finished it
you know.
yet.
Yeah, I'm 3 months in. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah,
I
but-
would absolutely start smoking again if we went back to the 50s. You know. 'cause you
Oh
can
yeah, there's
everywhere.
no fucking way I would be able to stave off of it, especially
yeah.
if they're smoking indoors. That's just not
Yeah.
happening.
Plus,
You
it was
know-
still healthy back then.
Yeah, but you know, as someone for the future, it's not healthy.
No.
You'll still get
Yeah.
cancer. So even then, you're like, fuck it, 1958.
I think I would. I think it's just
I just don't think I would be able to stop myself. You know.
because my thing is I don't necessarily love smoking. I love the social aspect of it all. Like I love
Yeah.
going outside, dipping outside and just talking for a bit. I mean, like Flieger and I basically got addicted from them together because we just used to only smoke in South by Southwest when we would attend it. And then it just became a thing that has kind of lurked in it. And I always said it was just because of the socialization thing. It definitely became a stress relief thing. We can't go into this.
Yes.
We have too many characters. This is ridiculous. Cigarettes are not one of the characters. I see one being highlighted by Flieger. Frank Dunning. Let's finally talk about him.
Too many Franks, I will say.
There's a lot of Franks here. But he
There's a
does
lot
that,
of
you know? He's the Drogan Dorgan thing.
Yeah.
This is a charming guy. This is a guy that also is evil in the inside, has the cold eyes, as Jake notes when he goes and sees him in the butcher shop. This is a guy that, as they say on page 156, this is in America, people always believe in these types of guys, the Frank Dunnings. Is that still the case today? Do we think that the Frank Dunning doesn't work in 2023? Julia?
Can I point out this is kind of Patrick Bateman?
Yeah.
Right? Because the whole deal with Christian Bale's character is that everybody ignores all of the psycho stuff he's doing because he's so beautiful. He doesn't try to hide anything in that book or that movie. He just goes out and does it all. He has the bodies out in public. He has the bloody sheets. Like nobody cares because he's so beautiful. So I feel like it's this kind of thing. And he also has the cold eyes, right? There's nothing behind it, but he can pretend to be human. So yes, I feel like that reminds me of this. You go, oh, if he's beautiful enough, he's charming enough, people go, oh, that couldn't be him. There's no way. I know that person and he's not like that. So I think it still flies.
What do you think, Jen?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Still flies. You know, that's one of the scariest parts of this section to me is just how charming he is and how willing people are to overlook everything. And I'm just reading right now Oscar Wars, and I'm on the Harvey Weinstein section. So it just kind of makes me think, you know, that this is what we do because we want to believe that people we like are good. And it's interesting to see even Bev kind of be like, well, he's nice, which is, I've got more to say about that later. But yeah, I think it's absolutely holds up today.
Did Justin inspire you to read?
He did,
yeah,
and it's good. I'm enjoying it.
There is the Oprah book club, but there should be a Justin book club.
There should be a Justin book club. He has inspired me to download Blood Meridian 3 times, but I have not read it yet. But
you like
our
Blood
last
Meridian, right?
episode,
fan,
oh yeah, I downloaded the Dead Zone, and I'm gonna finally gonna read it again because of the comps to this, and because we talked about it in our last episode.
My number one king. Frank Dunning, your dad's name is Frank Flieger. Did you see any similar?
I have a lot of Franks. My brother, my grandpa. It's a common name in my life.
Yeah.
I think
was it hard to distinguish?
I think the Gaston comparison is good for Frank, which I think you might have said earlier, Mike. It's just he's a big, loud, kind of charming sociopath. He's an alpha male amongst his little cronies, right? So they all want to make him happy and get a pat on the back. And he does it a little too hard, right? He invades your personal space. Who was it again that did him in the miniseries? It was
Josh Duhamel.
So what's funny is him and Timothy Oliphant always get mistaken for each other. And I think Timothy Oliphant could have been a good... actually, Timothy Oliphant on Conan said he sent a picture of Josh to his mom, and his mom was like, "Oh, you look good in this, Tim," just to show how much they look like that his mom couldn't tell the difference.
He could go.
I think he's not like a big Jim where he's not as cunning, but you need to have this, and I think also seeing as this is a bit of a speed run for the Oswald mission, we need to have somebody identified as kind of the big bad in this time period, right? So I think it's good that he scouts him out a little bit, and we get to at least know sort of what he's like, because we know what he's like at home, right? We know what he's going to do, but when you see him in town, he just seems like he's a very gregarious and affable guy.
Which is interesting because most serial killers that you think when they get caught later, everyone's like, oh, he was so quiet. Oh, he kept to himself. And this isn't something that he's doing at all. It's such a surprise that someone with such cold blood could also be so charming and so affable with the entire town to fool Derry, right? Because Derry knows there's evil going on and everyone's like, oh, no, he's fine. They don't even see that Derry's infected him.
He's a good personification for that. Yeah.
And I think I just watched that movie, what was it? Where Evil Lurks last night.
Oh, When Evil Lurks. Yeah, that movie
really
is fucking
good.
awesome.
I really liked it. That was very intense.
So gnarly.
Yeah. But they talk about too how the evil can kind of find its way into certain people if you let it. So whether he was always like this or the town of Derry kind of infected him, I think he was predisposed to be a bad guy. He has the rage issues. And I think the town will just take it's like steroids, right? If you're already a raging person and you take steroids, you get the roid rage. But if you're not like that, taking steroids isn't going to make you a mean person. But if you already are predisposed, it's just going to add gas to that fire.
Save that, because I want to really just lean into that very question when we talk about Derry as a whole, because there are some other questions I reserved from other characters that I think are going to be interesting in that capacity, because I think we're on the same page. I wondered, without getting too far into that tunnel or rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, a hole, do you think he's a little comic book character-y in his descriptions? You talk about how he's his muscles are pulsing. And he's I just imagine the Juggernaut walking through the fucking neighborhoods, or like Gaston would be comically arch, just this sort of giant upper body and then small feet. I can't shake that image for this guy character.
Well, you keep talking about Gaston, and I have recently, because I just went through and watched the Evil Dead series recently, and I think that Gaston is Bruce Campbell.
Oh,
look at his face,
100%.
Look at the jaw,
Absolutely.
right, with the big muscles in Army of Darkness. I'm like, oh, it's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
So if you have, I've never seen Bruce Campbell be this scary, and I would be delighted to see him take that on.
That would have been awesome. Yeah.
I think of him as Eddie Brock, the guy who plays Venom in the comics. Where he is kind of bully, kind of a meathead. He is kind of a little bit of what we would think of as a 1950s. He's kind of like the Biff, right, of the time period. But I don't know that we can think of bullying is so much different now. Even if the intention is the same, it's a lot more, I think, even scary and menacing, because bullies can reach you, even through the internet. But a guy back then that would be considered a slick or a tough guy would almost be comical to us now. Because we'd be like, that guy's not so scary. Oh, great, he's got a pack of cigarettes rolled in his sleeve. What a badass.
Yeah.
What, Jen, you were going to say something?
Well, I feel like the 50s ness in itself like kind of feels larger than life about him.
Yeah.
So it's not a negative thing for me. I think it makes him more interesting and more scary. Also, I just have Josh Duhamel in my head. But one thing I think is interesting is, we mentioned getting this side of the story from Frank Dunning, and that's essentially The Shining, which I think, like, as he's using the sledgehammer, I was like, oh, mallet, it's just the other side of it. And I wonder what Jack would look like from the outside if we didn't have so much of his internal thoughts, and I guess you could say that's Kubrick's The Shining, which a criticism of that is that Nicholson is crazy from the beginning, which I'm not saying that's my opinion. I'm saying it's been said. And so it's interesting to think about him being over the top. I think it's hard for me to think of him as a real person because I know he is just the enemy of this section, and that the cold eyes shifting, I think, is so key to having him feel just like not human. Like he comes in like a Terminator, and he just is smashing.
Can I ask why we think that King didn't set this during the Pennywise cycle? Because we have the Corcoran case, right? In it, where we have Dorsey Corcoran, who his father kills him with a hammer. So this is something that, and we know that Dorsey's father did it because he's infected by Pennywise, right? And this is I feel the same way, although Bev and Richie say, like, you don't have to worry about that, it's all done. So is the influence still there, or are we thinking Frank Dunning just did this on his own? He's just insane. It has nothing to do with that.
Well, say that again, because I really want to talk about that as the power of Derry, because I think that's exactly what is been on my mind on the second reread, because it does make you wonder now when I think back, and I'm glad you brought up Jack Torrance because it's in the same page where I'm like, is there some sort of personification or this, I don't know, this kind of the way that King describes time, is there this sort of evil that permeates through his characters that are almost like a possession, as opposed to like the inner evil within you. And I know that there are distinguishing characters where it definitely is just pure evil, but like when you consider the Maine archetype, and I'm not talking about the state of Maine, although I guess that would fit for most of these characters. But when you think about like someone like Greg Stilson, who also is like very sort of tall tale-esque in its villainry, they all seem to be possessed or at least influenced by some other force. Maybe not literally, but at least you get the idea that something else is at work here. I mean, I kind of get that with Frank Dunning with this for sure, like what Julia was saying. But is there something to be said about the larger elements in King's Dominion of like, is that how he looks at evil? Is this thing that can possess you, even if it's not like a demon per se?
I think so. And I think the common denominator here is alcohol. And I think that's something that we see with a lot of his evil or larger than life villains. Like I'm thinking of The Kid and The Stand too. And even Billy Nolan, like driving around drunk, and whatever, Buddy Repperton driving around drunk.
They
like,
all have that source. Yeah,
they do. True. Yeah. And I feel like, especially knowing King and knowing what he's been through, I think, because we've got Christie, which is a compassionate view of an alcoholic. And we have this, which is a really cold, really violent view of an alcoholic, like the other side of that coin, and I think what I see really kind of echoing through a lot of King is that, yes, that evil is always there. And alcohol is one of the things that opens the door to that. And that's what we see with Jack too, because you could ask the same question. Is it The Shining? Is it the Overlook? Is it the alcohol? Or would this have happened anywhere? And I think what King is saying is that this is, and this is not like all or nothing, because Annie Wilkes, doesn't really have this issue, but that's one of the things that invites it in,
It's pervasive for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if he's the Henry Bowers, even though Henry Bowers does exist here, we'll make a reference probably soon enough.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's this cause a wheel situation that happens in Derry, where if Frank Dunning is the more Bowers that grew up and managed to get away, we do have some older losers that maybe didn't fare as well as the losers that we know dear to our heart and that appear in this book itself that we'll talk about soon enough. But that's how I viewed Chaz Fratty and No Suspenders Turcotte, is that these were very similar. These are the losers if they weren't able to conquer the evil at hand, or have at least the large enough contingent to be able to do it. These feel like if like Richie and Eddie never knew Jor, or never knew Bill, never knew Mike, never knew Bev, and they were just on their own, and they let the ills of the town get to him. Because I'm seeing a lot of similarities between the characters that we already know. Anyone want to digress on that aspect of it all? Especially, this is our way of talking about Chaz and No Suspenders. So
I love that. I think it's really, the losers go through a lot of shit, and they're not lucky in a lot of ways, but they are lucky that they found each other, and it feels like when we're hearing the stories, I will say I get the two of them mixed up sometimes, because they kind of serve similar purposes. But to hear about like these stories where Frank was bullying them, and it feels like they kind of touched something, but maybe they weren't the chosen ones that Ka found, or maybe this just didn't happen during the cycle, so the good magic was not there as strong as it needed to be for them to kind of find each other, which makes me really sad for them.
But Chaz and Stan have to know each other, right? How many Jewish people are there in Derry?
I was wondering about that too. Yeah. Like, because it does seem, I mean, first off, it just seems not only just outsiders are bad in Derry, but like anyone who's not, a white male or from a white family or from well off or something like that, you're fucked. This is the worst place to be.
Everyone in Derry is fucked, man. There's no
only
way
thing to do is get out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found the Chaz in the No Suspenders backstory really touching and really kind of sad. And I did wonder, like, do you see, especially Bill, do you see him as a scumbag, or do you actually think his backstory and what happens with him redefines him?
Why does he wait so long?
I know, that's true.
I think he is the Jake that never got up enough courage to actually do something, and I think he is kind of what we can separate Jake from, to kind of view him as a hero, because I could see myself waiting too and not actually doing anything and just kind of living with that misery,
But he presents himself as such a tough guy.
Yeah.
And he does protect Chaz when he's getting beat up, right? Which he doesn't have to do, but he chooses to do that. So he does have a goodness in there somewhere. And I think that's the part of it that's interesting, is why does he not, if he knows the difference between right and wrong and it has affected him personally, why is he allowing Frank to continue to cause misery? Because he knows what he's doing to his family, not what he's going to do ultimately, but he knows he's abusing them. But I guess there's so much of that in Derry. How do you say who's the worst? But I feel like if I knew for certain that this person had killed my sister and nephew, but it's also, how does Jake has the opportunity to get out afterwards, right? And Bill would have to live with those consequences. Will probably go to jail for Shawshank for life. He knows that, so there is a consequence that Jake doesn't have.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said about the numbers too, because when you think about the symmetry between that backstory where Chaz is being pummeled, King doesn't have to do it, but he says that they're off there's like a ravine, right? He says there's a ravine behind I believe the football field or something like that kind of leads to, it's basically the Barrens.
Yeah.
Like, it's basically the Barrens, and it's basically what happens when like Mike Hanlon's being, chased around, and to his luck that the losers actually come around and he stumbles upon the losers. In this case, Chaz only gets No Suspenders. There's no one else. He doesn't find the other team that could create some sort of or some sort of group or some sort of community. And so I think there is also a larger thing to be said of just how important that sense of community is, especially for outsiders such as Chaz or No Suspenders. And I think that there is this sort of tragic element to this inclusion that has almost more layers than any of the side stories that King usually does. If you think about it, like just the implications of what it says about Derry and the cycle of it all, the concept of what the Losers Club really does represent in the end, and how important it was to each one of those individuals in that club. And here's what happens when you don't have that. And in that sense, it's weird because it's almost like the reverse happens to them, because it's like there are only like 2 or 3 bullies, if I recall, that are going after Mike Hanlon in the original It. And in this case, there's only 2, for lack of a better word, good guys or other losers. But there's like, doesn't he just say there's like 6 or 7 of these guys with Frank?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the inverse in a way.
It's like the reverse of the rock fight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But couldn't it be the previous cycle? Because if we're saying, what ages we're talking about for Chaz and Bill, couldn't have been 1931? Couldn't they have been going through this, and couldn't have been the same thing that they're affected by? They know there's a cycle going on. They've lived there long enough.
Yeah. And maybe the negative energy is amping itself up enough that like Chaz is not able to find anybody else, or I'm sorry, No Suspenders isn't able to actually rescue him, and I think it just kind of speaks to the power of friendship and the power of like when you see something like Pennywise or something that is like an ultimate evil, it puts everything else in perspective. And you see somebody like Frank Dunning and you're like, oh, he's not as scary as I thought he was, and there's that courage that I think Bill never gets, because he never gets to touch the other side of that magic,
And he does save Chaz, and then they aren't really friends, right? Like they're friends enough where they can do something like this, but it's not like they're buddies. It's not like they're hanging out. It's not like they're quartet. He saves him and then he's out again.
Right.
So there is a sense of one moment of courage and then it's gone.
Yeah. Or is it just Derry being Derry? This is just one bit in a whole bunch of shitty stuff. And, Bill's just one guy that happened to save him,
Yeah. What do you think, Fligger? Do you think this is just kind of happenstance?
I guess I'm kind of odd person out here. I didn't really find their very interesting story. Like, it's more interesting talking now and kind of comparing it to the losers.
Yeah.
But I think because I was so eager to get to Dallas, that a lot of these characters that I know were going to kind of leave in the dust, leave in the past, I wasn't really as locked in with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also had trouble in my mind keeping Turcotte and Fratty. I wasn't sure exactly who was who, but I also didn't really care to, bend over backwards and remember them. So I think the discussion here is more interesting than actually reading through them.
So they're more like distractions to the fireworks factory.
Yeah.
Well, and their exposition device too.
Yeah, I blazed through them. Blaze being Blaze. But...
Blaze being Blaze.
Blaze being Blaze. How about that?
Blaze being Blaze.
Yeah.
Remember, Flieger, one has no suspenders, so that's how you can tell them apart.
I know, but I have no suspenders either, so it's like, is that my nickname?
I was just marveling at the genius of that nickname because I love it so much, but it implies that every other person is wearing suspenders.
It's like Dan no mohawk Flieger. It's like,
right. Yeah, Jen no monocle Adams.
Yeah.
But would you try the lobster pickings?
Yes.
Oh, fuck yes.
Well, I would
Mike couldn't, because Mike would die.
I think especially in 1958, I'd die. I don't think they have Benadryl yet and stuff. So,
are you allergic to lobster?
Yeah, shellfish I can't eat. So it was real fun when we landed in Maine last year, and I was like,
we went to Lobster Boy.
The Lobster Boy, and I just ate everyone's coleslaw because I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't even have fries because they cooked them with the lobster. So I was like, all right, well, this will be interesting.
But I ate that. The bread, yeah.
There was, it was not good, but everyone enjoyed it, and it seemed like everyone had a fun afternoon. But that's what the cigarettes were for at that point for me. I like that you really did dial back, Julia, on this, because or let's just say that if they're the same age or roughly the same age as Frank's what, like 38, 40 tops?
Mm-hmm.
So 27, they'd be 11, 12 around that time. And that would be like in 1930, 1931. 1930 is when the black spot burns down.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be around the same time there's another cycle. So it's conceivable that was during a cycle in that sense. So I kind of like that.
Maybe a hangover to the cycle.
Yeah.
Because there was
lasts
no
about
loser
a year, right? So they have plenty of time within there.
Yeah.
They
could.
And
hey,
also when there's no losers club to like lock it down,
all bets are off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what Welcome to Derry is going to be.
That actually, reading this made me excited for that, because I think that there's a lot to explore there. One last quick note about Chaz Fratty. So in It, King writes, quote, "Now standing in the fading drizzle in front of a trustworthy hardware store that had been a pawn shop in 1958, Fratty Brothers, Ben recalled, the double windows, always full of pistols and rifles and straight razors and guitars hung up by their necks like exotic animals. And as we know from our trip to Bangor, there's a Friday Jewelers. That's a real place. So I wonder if this was King kind of doing the same thing with Anicetti, where he was trying to include, these real life characters into that. And Chaz, I imagine Chaz Frady would be the same. His family would be part of the jewelers. He owns a lot of land, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was a part of it too. But just some fun little history that I dug up. But
I wonder if that's King did that research and wanted to put him in Lisbon Falls.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well,
yeah,
his name is still kind of cycling around in his head,
He does that. He definitely has
Yeah.
names where he just kind of lingers again. But I thought it was interesting that it was, he does go back to 1958. If Ben does reference in that, there has to be some. He has his researchers that help him out when he's writing this stuff, but he has to have a storybook, I imagine, that has all this shit in here too. But
Caw is a wheel. I think that's
Caw is a wheel, and seeing how we're in Derry, Caw is everywhere, and so are familiar faces, familiar heroes and villains to discuss, all of which now exist in a place that we call, in a segment we're going to jump to early, King's Dominion.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
All right, we have held off long enough. I think it's time to discuss all the fun Easter eggs that we got in this section. And I know that was certainly been one of the hooks for us to discuss for a very long time. I want to talk about Derry first. And I think that this is, being it's a stand-in for Bangor, I feel like this is the town that certainly haunts King, because most of the constructs that he's come up with for his works were in his backyard, and this is his backyard. And I want to say, like, this is, so here's my real revelation rereading this. When I read 11/22/63, I had not read it.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I didn't read it until 2015, 2016.
That's
so,
bonkers, man.
yeah.
I read that when I was
Holy shit.
11 years old.
I had seen the miniseries and I had known about it, but I didn't. So I was really leaning on that. But yeah, it wasn't until I didn't sit down to actually read it until my, I guess, lore of tearing the pages and throwing them trashing them all across Europe when I was there. But so rereading this now was so much fun because now I recognize all these things. Like, I knew a lot of the larger elements and what have you, but I just didn't know all the true details, specifically how the town felt. And I think that the way King slides into this and the descriptions that he uses is just, it's so good. It's just such good writing, and it's such good prequelizing in a way that doesn't feel forced. It feels incredibly organic. And it's really haunting. I thought the character of Derry comes out almost more so in this because there is an outsider, and you are seeing it from another perspective as opposed to the people living there. And so in that sense, like, I felt like, as a reader who is an outsider with Jake, the town is that much more frightening.
But I think it also works on more than one level, right?
Yeah.
Because for us as constant readers, reading this is an absolute delight, right?
Mhm.
And he's adding these things. You go, ooh, ooh, and like me, put my little markers in and my little highlighter and get very excited. But someone like my father, who has never read any other Stephen King book in his life, this means nothing to him, right? Derry means nothing. So you have to explain it well enough to people who are not reading any of your other books to let them know what Derry is about. And you can reference Pennywise, but my dad doesn't know who Bev and Richie are. That means nothing. It's just random kids, right? And it still works. It's just to constant readers, it's more meaningful.
Yeah. What do you make of it, Flieger? Because when you read 11/22, you'd read it by then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd read it a long time ago. I forgot, actually, because, like, these are little details in my mind. I think of the Kennedy assassination, but I forget that there's this whole other story that kind of takes place. So it was nice to see, like, I guess it's almost like when the factory closes down or something and the town kind of starts to rust away. There was this sense that Derry was no longer this special place, right? Kind of had been through it, and the people feel a little bit tired. So I did, like, especially when you see the kids and it looks like they're embracing, like, oh, this rock and roll. And so they still have this innocence to them that a lot of the older folks in town are kind of like, we know how this town is. It's a sick place, right? And it eats you away. And them seeing people that are full of optimism and hope, you can tell they're almost like, wait till Derry gets to you. It's going to slowly rot you.
But Derry has gotten to Bev and Richie, and they still are willing to push through and dance, even though they've seen the horrors that they've seen.
But I think that's because they're
really
heroes
lovely
too, right? They're the example that kind of proves the rule, like the exception that they did stand up to it, whereas everyone else kind of lets it wash over them. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah. Yeah. Jen, you had done your whole chronological King read through at this point, or
not yet? No, actually, I think I started it pretty soon after reading this for the first time. But I knew I had read it and loved it, and I was really excited because I had heard that they were going to pop up, but I thought it was just like, I don't know. Just like I don't know, Christine driving through the town or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does really bring the feeling of Derry back. And I love, Derry is just as much a character here as Bev and Richie. And it's so funny, Dan, because when I think of this book, I think of this part and I think of Sadie and I forget about the Kennedy assassination stuff. And it's kind of the same way with it. Like I forget about Pennywise because my heart just immediately goes to the losers.
Friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like we've got these mixed feelings because there's this like overwhelming kind of dread as you read all of the Derry stuff. And I feel like it's so ugly in this story, and it could just be because it's condensed. It's not like ugly Derry stretched over 1,100 pages, and then it's kind of counteracted by this like shining light that is Bev and Richie.
Yeah, I think the thing I really loved rereading this is just, it's what I said earlier. It's like the outsider perspective and just being able to kind of glean the fact that something is amiss here, that it's not just the people. There's a poison in the air, and it's this town. And there are a lot of great lines that I think King puts up that, right when they get in there, he says, because it's great because there's the juxtaposition of like Jake is driving, he's loving the 50s, he's enjoying this drive, it's all sunny. And then it says, that was until I got to Derry. And that's how it ends one of the chapters. And then you start it, and it said that, there was something wrong with that town. And I think I knew it from the first. And King doesn't let up. Like he just stresses how unhappy and miserable the atmosphere of this town is. And at one point he writes, downtown Derry looked only marginally more charming than a dead hooker in a church pew. I mean, fuck. Like,
sex worker. King.
Yeah. It's just, it's just very like, oh my God. I mean, so I was talking to Losers Club historian, Brian Burnett, and we were just kind of passing some notes about 1122, and he had a really good description of the way that King's magic works here. He said, it feels like really for real post-it Derry, which should not be taken for granted. Stuff like that is why his whole body of work genuinely feels at times like it's just a guy taking photos of some place that truly exists. How he manages that, I don't know, but he does, and this book might be the best example of a crossover of that nature. I agree. I think I'm usually the one that's against the Easter eggs and, going back to the past, revisiting the well, but it's so strange that this technically isn't a prequel or a sequel because these years exist in the book, but yet it does feel like a sequel and it does feel like a prequel at the same time. And it is very organic to me. Like it doesn't ever feel forced. But did you all share that sentiment?
No, agree. I feel like this would have run the risk of making it feel like it's shoehorned in just to wink at us. And it doesn't feel like that. Like I said, my dad doesn't know, and that it would work just as well. So I think it's something that I'm so glad he did, because there is that huge gap between the losers, right? We don't see them again for the 27 years. To have this little bit of a PS to be like, okay, they went through all this and they're still dancing. And I think that's so beautiful. Yeah. And that's actually my favorite line in this whole section is about Bev and Richie and like how beautiful it is that they are still dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Julia mentioned, it's, your dad having not been familiar with the material. I think it's good because it doesn't sidetrack us too much. It doesn't get stuck into the too much of a wink, nudge, but it's something that you do enjoy. It is like, I think how Easter eggs should kind of exist, that it's like a little bit of reward that, if it literally, it's just a treat. It's a little surprise that wouldn't I don't know. It's with the Marvel movies. There's like too much of like, you have to know this, and you almost can't be in the moment. Whereas with this, I can see this, get a sense, and even thematically, like this idea of like the hero, it adds to Jake's story without hitting you over the head with it.
Yeah. Jen.
Yeah, and I think it kind of just speaks to King as a writer too, and because I'm looking at that quote from Bryant about like taking a picture of some place that truly exists, and like you can tell that Derry really exists to him, and that it's something that it almost feels like he stumbled upon Derry again too, and was like, wow, this was really like a dark place to write about, and that's, I think, why it doesn't feel forced to me, is because this feels like a place that King, he grew up in. It's essentially Bangor, but yeah, it's just so well done. And none of the like little landmarks, like I'm trying to think if he actually mentions Kansas Street or Witcham Street, which would have been
yes, he
so
does. Witcham
easy.
and Jackson. He does.
Does he? But it would have been so easy to just like list off everything in Derry, but it feels like he's actually walking through this town too, and knowing that he kind of uncovers stories. It almost feels like I could imagine King writing this and being like, "Oh, this is really scary. I'm remembering this dark stuff I wrote about." But also, there's light here too.
It makes. Go for it, Julia.
I just think that Derry is Bangor, right? I had always assumed, even from, because Bangor is so beautiful, and to look at it from the outside and look from the inside, but even as a small child, when I read it, I was like, oh, but this is what his life was like. This is him in a town where everything on the surface looks sugar candy. And then underneath, there's people beating each other and killing each other and doing these terrible things. And in a small town where nobody would talk about it. So these things are happening, but nobody will say, did you hear about this? It is, nobody will help, even though they know that there is evil. And I feel like he must have experienced that to a point where that makes sense for him to write about.
He does donate like nonstop throughout Bangor and create so many programs and everything. But I do wonder if the town council, after reading like this, and it were like, all right, like, we know that this is a stand-in for Bangor, but like, can you like
we're doing our best, Steve.
Pump the brakes on our fucking town for a little bit? Like, it's just so funny. Like that description of the town, of the church, that it's just like, I can imagine like the mayor or anyone in the city council reading it and being like, well, we know what the Kings think of us. But this makes sense where he's at. Also in his own timeline for his bibliography, like he's coming off Under the Dome, which is so much detailing, even probably on the grandest scale he's ever done when you really think about it. Like even, I mean, obviously The Stand is up there, but is probably the number one. But in terms of small town storytelling, Under the Dome is just at another level. I mean, it's like double of what Needful Things is in terms of just the scale and the size of it all.
Cut like 500 pages too.
Exactly. So like
I would read all of those. I would read them all.
Oh,
never
same.
enough.
I fucking love that book. But what's great about that book is that you really do get a sense of place, like he did before, but at another level. Like you really get into some of the nuances, and he gets into a lot of the sort of spiritualism of it all. And I think that carries on to 1122. And I think what he does then is he's basically kind of rebuilding sandboxes, because Derry is one of them, in which I think honestly, if I haven't read the next two books I'm going to discuss in a second, but his follow-up to this is Dark Tower Went Through the Keyhole. And his other follow-up to this is Dr. Sleep. And both of those books are in that world, in worlds he's already created and worlds that he's revisiting. And I'd argue that the best parts of at least Dr. Sleep, because I haven't read Written Through the Keyhole yet, but I could argue that the best part of Dr. Sleep is when he's in the sandbox he did already create. And it's not so much excited. It doesn't work for me when he strays from that sandbox and tries to bring other characters into it. And yet in 1122, he does it with aplomb. Like it's fucking perfect. Like the marriage here between Jake as an outsider and his storyline within what's happening in Derry, I mean, hot take, but might be the most seamless blend of worlds that he's ever written for me. I really do think so. I can't think of, because I love the Dark Tower, and I love Drawing of the Three, and I love when it gets into some of the brazen aspects of his storytelling in Dark Tower 6 and 7. But I don't know, I didn't wince like what Justin always says with like the blue milk with Star Wars here. I just really didn't. There was never a moment in Derry here where I felt like, all right, you're getting a little too cheeky. Like it really did feel like an organic return. So
and I think part of that is because we don't stay too long. You know?
Yeah.
Like I love Dr. Sleep and I will listen to no slander. I'm kidding. But I think like that entire book, it's like if 1122, if Richie was the one to go back through the rabbit hole. You know, I do think that it might feel, I mean, I would watch it, especially if later.
I'd read it.
Or actually Bev is the one that we need to spin off. But like, I feel like if it were him, like, because most of this book is a brand new character in a way that Dr. Sleep is not, you know? And so I think he knows when to go in and he knows when to get out.
He's just in this groove. And I think you really get the sense of it in this section that like, man, he is fucking flying. Like he is back to whatever flex he had in those early books in the 70s and certainly throughout the 80s. There's just a confidence in the writing here that even I don't think is necessarily there in some of my favorite books of the aughts for him. I just don't. Like, I think that the way that he writes in this, it's so assured, it's so confident. He knows this shit back and forth that there's never a moment, and at least this section, I'm very curious to see how the next ones are going to be as he goes to explore newer territories on my reread that I'm re-exploring. But I get the sense that it's still is still at this level of strength that I never feel like I'm being misguided. I never feel like there's a gasp in sort of, this doesn't really work really. He kind of is meandering here. Like, no, everything counts. And that's just, I don't know, when that happens for him, it's like watching like, you know, an athlete at their top peak form. And it's fun. It's fun to go, not only just to revisit the town itself, but also to see this sort of old school King come back in a way and using some of his newer tools in the shed. So,
well, it's a cycle because if we look at it, like I just Googled, when was it published? And my math is probably wrong, but like 86 to 2011, that's like a 20-ish. So he's like also drawing on the power of that old King too.
And leaning on a lot of the dramatic aspects that he's been able to flex and curve out since then too.
Yeah, but the dramatic mixed with the fear too.
Yeah. And honestly, Hearts in Atlantis seems like a core text here too, because it's like he's drawing on a lot of memory, you know? And I think that by revisiting his own past in that book and fictionalizing aspects of it, I mean, fictionalizing a lot of it, but still a lot of it comes from his own memory. I think that kind of is a power he was able to blend in this book too. So, and
I think both of those two are from a sober King too. And I think maybe after the accident, you know, we talked a lot about like, will I still be able to write without alcohol? You know, King post drinking, and I think here he's really finding the power of the old King, but without that crutch that he had.
Yeah. Bev and Richie, let's talk about them.
Yeah,
let's do it. The way that King brings him in with the use of Glenn Miller, so good. It just, when you were reading this, did you have any inkling that this was going to be where you're going to stumble into the losers?
I had no idea. I cannot tell you the delight it gave me. It's interesting that they're listening to Glenn Miller and swing dancing though, because even in 1958, that would have been old fashioned, right? Because when you're 1950s, you're jitterbugging, you're getting up there into, you know, a different kind of dance. I think it's interesting that it's Bev and Richie because growing up, you know, because I've read it more times than I can count. And I had always counted Bill as the main character. He's the main loser. He's the head of the Losers Club. But the more times I read it, the more times I think that Richie is actually the main character. And if you read through with that in your mind, like he saves them twice. And so I think he's the one who's really seeing what's going on. And so I think having Richie in here kind of bolsters that theory for me. And I'm like, oh, what if it really is Richie? What if it really was him all the time? Because you discount him because he's a trash mouth, because he's always being silly and he's never being serious. But when it gets down to we have to fight these fucking monsters, he's the one who actually has the guts to go in and do it.
Yeah. What do you think, Fligger? What did you think that you were going to stumble into, you know, familiar characters here, or did you think it was going to be actually something more menacing?
Because I started my King journey with the Dark Tower, so I've just always approached it as there's going to be connections.
Anything goes, yeah.
So anytime we're in Maine, I'm immediately like, okay, there's going to be some kind of connection here. I didn't know it was going to be them specifically. But I was actually pretty happy that of all the references he could have made, especially because it has not time travel, but it takes place in different time periods. And the fact that we were talking, I think, in the last episode about how King has sort of started with like Hearts in Atlantis and some of these other ones, his historic looking, he picks like a specific time period or a decade and really goes after it. So the fact that this is time travel based, it seems appropriate to run into the kids sort of in their off cycle of battling it. So I was surprised. I didn't go with any expectations. I just thought this was going to be about the Kennedy thing. So this whole like side quest. Oh, sorry,
it was Richie though. Were you surprised it was Richie and Bev?
I don't know. I guess I didn't put too much weight into it. I just figured that those were kids. I don't know if it's hard for me to tell like the significance of it being them. But it does seem like because it's a boy meets girl story in a lot of ways too, that it would make sense with a male and female pairing.
Mm-hmm. But Richie and Bev never have anything together. Like she likes Ben, or Ben likes her, she likes Bill, but there's never like a Richie and Bev, like, ooh, kind of.
Yeah, I guess it went over my head a little bit, the significance of it being Richie, but kind of I agree with your argument where you're saying that he is the more kind of heroic one. And as we see later on, like dancing becomes a big issue with Jake's love life, so it seems appropriate that of all the activity, they could have been playing jacks or hula hooping, but they're dancing for a reason, right?
Yeah,
yo-yoing.
Yeah, check out this new toy I got.
Check out my Street Fighter. Yeah.
Jen, when they again, same question. Like, what were your thoughts? Like when you first, are reading about Jake hearing the Glenn Miller, they're approaching the Barrens. Was there any part of you that actually thought that it might be the power, within the Barrens actually calling Jake over? Because that came to mind for me, that I thought it was something going to be menacing. Even on my reread, I was like, I knew that this was going to be the moment, but I was wondering like, this could have gone the other way, where there was something other. There's something other out down there that's actually getting him.
Well, and there's a moment that I pulled from for Pet Sematary where I think something darker does call to him. But yeah, I do love that this is the light of Derry. And it's like there's this really great quote about the veil in Derry and how they see each other, And I absolutely love that it's Bev and Richie. Of course, Bev is one of my all-time favorite characters. And I think it was actually this book that made me kind of reconsider Richie. And on my next reread, I was kind of reading him as more of a main character, or at least a character that I was more drawn to than Bill. And I've been doing that with Larry Underwood when I reread The Stand too. And I just really love those characters that kind of go unsung when there's this not larger than life, but there's this capital A protagonist, But what I love is that it is Bev and Richie, because I feel like they have really had this strong connection. Like that's, I think, maybe the first time we meet Bev, and it is when she and Richie or that's one of the first pairings that we see, is when Richie kind of asks her to the movies, but there's never anything romantic, and it could easily have been Bev and Ben or Bev and Bill. But I feel like that would have cast a light on this love triangle in the book. And I just love that Bev and Richie are just friends. And that's the strength of their relationship. And it never goes past that, because that's what the Losers Club really is this friendship. And I think Bev and Richie really kind of, that they're the heart of it, and they're my two favorites. Although, I don't know, every time I say a loser is my favorite other than Bev, I think of like one other loser that is also my favorite and that I love. But
my favorite loser is, Patrick Hockstetter. No, I'm just joking.
I mean, he's definitely one of the hottest losers in the remake of who is it? Who our friend
Owen too.
Owen, yeah.
What about the idea that? So I actually do think it makes sense with this Richie, because if you think about it, Richie is so indebted to the past. Like all his even problematic voices all seem to stretch back to 20, 30 years. So it would make sense that they would be, doing this sort of, maybe not ancient, but certainly archaic sided dancing and listening to Glenn Miller and having the records. I want to talk a little bit about this sort of connection that's happening here, because King alludes to a lot of psychic connections that are happening. Jake stresses this cannot be coincidence. He then later says they were the right ones. Bev at some point even asks, do you know about the turtle? What is all this suggesting? Does it mean that they're on this sort of path? They recognize that they're on this path of the beam. Are there any other theories that we can pull from that? I mean, just the fact that Bev would have the clairvoyance to say, do you know the turtle?
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a very strange question to ask an outsider, even if you do have some sort of, oh, this guy's curious. Like it just feels like something else is at play here. What do you all make of it?
I think it's nice because Bev and Richie know they're playing on a much larger playing field, right? Because they know there's this turtle who is everything is resting in their arms. They know that there's this specific evil. They know, and so, but Jake now knows that there's something bigger too, because he's just discovered time travel. He goes, oh, okay, my life as I know it is not everything, and so I think those two things coinciding makes sense for Bev to be like, okay, he gets that there's something else going on. And so she doesn't know specifically what that is, but I think it's kind of like, are we on the same side sort of thing, which I think is a good question to ask. And I think it's nice because it makes you feel like Jake is on the right path if he runs into these people. So he is going to succeed because they know that they see that he's on a path of light. So I think that's nice to tip to us that maybe all of this will turn out in the end.
Yeah, it's almost like they bless him, you know, with their, and it's, if we look at the yellow card / orange card man as kind of a guardian of time, then it's almost like they are a guardian of Derry. And we know that Mike will stay behind to be the lighthouse, but for right now they're still here. And it's like whatever force Ka that knew that he was going to have to go back and do this test is kind of giving them a bit of this light from these two characters who have seen this before. And yeah, it's kind of like bolstering him because they recognize each other. And, you know, he sees the thing that stands out to him is their bravery, that they just kind of exist on a higher level than everyone else. And that's the connection that he finds. And I think that's what is, and the fact that they give him the key to finding this family too, I think is kind of blessing his journey in a way, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's maybe not even that she would ask that to everyone, but it could be channeling through her the way that evil channels through people. I think sometimes the good, righteous light can channel through people. Because there are moments in the Dark Tower where, like, I believe it's Jake starts drawing a key in the sand, but he doesn't fully understand even why he's doing it. So she may not even be conscious that she's asking it, but it is, I think, of like, you know, are you like woke? You know, are you hip to this? Are you experienced? And it's just a way of getting that out, that there was something that compelled her to say that to him. And I think he even doesn't quite get it because he says something about like, I was going to ask about the Ninja Turtles, but then I think he's still on his journey yet. You know, he hasn't, this is the very beginning of the book, so he hasn't really done his dynamic character arc. So he may understand what the turtle is later on, you know, in terms of just the feeling of all things being connected and the understanding.
Do you think,
oh, go ahead.
Do you think it's a wink to Tower Junkies to say he is on the path of the beam?
Oh yeah, I think so.
He's going in this forward direction, and you give him this other kind of feeling to him that he is on this righteous path, that he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like, are you a good guy or a bad guy? And there's so few good guys that they do have to kind of recognize each other. You know, there's a lot of people that they're not bad, but they allow bad things to happen. So just the fact that he's going back and trying to do a good thing, I think they something like innately can pick up on it.
Would you say he's a gunslinger?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, he hasn't been blooded yet, you know. And
he's gunslinger curious. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean,
your answer tells me you know so much more about the Dark Tower than I do too.
No, but I feel like he would be a really good one if Roland had picked him, right? Because he doesn't have the kind of burdens that Eddie has or Susanna has. This is someone who I think would go forward and realize the difference between right and wrong very clearly. So I think he would make a great gunslinger.
Yeah, I think he has the moral compass for it, for sure. But he doesn't really have, I mean, other than Al's notes, he doesn't really have a mentor. So he is kind of on a blind path right now, but he's going to have to figure it out pretty soon. And I think as he starts to see more and more coincidences of time trying to correct itself and, you know, near car accidents and this and that, I think he's, you know, he leaves the book obviously like different than he started it. And I think by the end, he could call himself a gunslinger.
Well, you know, the two of them both love blondes. What can I say? So Susan Delgado, isn't she a blonde? Yeah, right. Yeah. So that makes sense. They like dancing too. So how about that?
That's true.
The two of them would get along great. It would be a good double date. Jake and Sadie
and Roland and Susanna.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
I'll pay money.
It'd be like Goodfellas date. Like I couldn't stand him.
And then like Jake comes home, and then or Roland comes home and sees that someone was being mean to Susan across and just goes like knocks
Pistol
him with
whips
the
TikTok man.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's enough with Rich and Bev though. I think that there's a lot being said here, especially with the way that they kind of speak with their eyes, as King says and suggests.
As best friends do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. I'm always speaking with my eyes on this podcast, especially if like we're going too long. I'm like, like I'm doing now, which is
doing the roll and wrap it up, Chester.
I said it was gonna be 90 minutes. It's already fucking 2 hours and 23. Fucking idiot, Mike. All right, real quick, the Fred Toomey scene at the bar. There's an argument to be had that it does feel a lot like in Wayne's World when Chris Farley expounds all that information about Frankie Sharp. And then they like walk away and they're like, you knew a lot for a security guard, didn't he? But I think he pulls it off here. Does anyone else think that scene with he's talking to the bartender about the history of Derry, there's a lot of information being digressed? Or, I mean, again, I think this whole section just moves and grooves, but I could see the arguments for it.
I think it's imperative for people like my dad. If you don't know, it just giving you, and it's not long enough for people who know Derry to be annoyed by it, but it's enough for people who don't know to be, okay, I get some backstory. And even if you know fleetingly about Pennywise, you're like, oh, okay, I can see the connection now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it felt pretty organic as much as it can be for exposition, right?
Yeah. It's also like, I like seeing a friendly face after all of the mean no suspenders people that he's been meeting. And it's interesting, like, I think for somebody not familiar with it is imperative also, but it's also like fun for me too. Because I'm like, ooh, it's like me every time somebody asks about Stephen King at a party. And I'm like, hey, let me tell you all the details of this book. And it's interesting to see it through the eyes of somebody who didn't read the book too. Like, this is what the top level story is. And we know all the details. And so that makes us feel like it makes me want to read the book again,
Yeah. Do you think he gets out of town?
Oh, I hope so.
To leave. Yeah. I feel like.
What if he just got eaten by a clown like
he
later
might have,
that night?
He's like walking along and just gets thrown in the water and all. But
yeah,
I looked him up
Fred.
because to me just it rung a bell and I was like, it's gotta be. But this is his only.
Well, there's also Craig Toomey from Langoliers.
That's it.
Right.
That's
so
probably
is
the
there
bell,
is there a connection there? One wonders.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a pretty specific last name.
I feel
Fred
like all
Toomey's
those
Bronson Pinchot, right? Like the bad guy in Langoliers, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I feel like Fred Toomey's nicer.
Well,
maybe it's just Ka.
I thought it might be actually a sort of gallows humor on behalf of King, because then maybe in like 86 we find out that he actually, Toomey was one of the people that died, but they don't say anything. I thought it would have been funny if he was like, yeah, I'm going to get out of here in a month. And then you find out that it's like the ending of Stand By Me. It's like, Toomey never did get out. And it just,
Nobody in the free zone never saw Susan.
Yeah. Last I saw you doing odd jobs around Castle Rock. One last familiar face, my man, Norbert Keane.
He's your man?
I love this guy. He's such a shithead. He's such a prick. He's such an asshole. Like, I think that his inclusion is really one of the sharpest of the returning characters, because he not only is he a minor character, but it allows King to kind of lean on that sort of mean humor and then also that sort of peripheral horror that I guess in the movies they really love to chalk up. But the way that he delights in Jake's pain, and then that creepy part where he's like, oh, Keen was watching him from across the way when he left the bar, and he's just staring at him with no smile. No, it just really, really gets under my skin. What do we think is going on with King? Is he like a stand-in for Pennywise? Is he a stand-in for just the idea that Derry is fucked in the head?
I think he's just a stand-in for Derry.
Yeah.
She's like, this is the basis of what it is that someone's enjoying someone else's pain. But also as a pharmacist, all the town secrets.
Yeah.
What drugs everybody's taking, and he does show Eddie some compassion, right? He does tell Eddie, it's a placebo. It's all a lie. He doesn't have to say that. And in fact, like, he lets him know, your mom's lying you. Your mom's gaslighting you. You need to know. So there is that small piece of Norbert Keane that I like, that he does that, even if you could see it as cruel for crashing his world, but he does tell the truth. So there is an element of truth to this meanness, I think.
Mm-hmm. God, what a shithead.
Yeah,
what do you? He is. He's just like the way that he. I mean, I know there's a lot of criticisms about the adaptation in 2017 and 2019, but I think the Keane aspect of it all is like nailed to a T. Like he just that's like such a personification of what I always picture when he pops up. But I love when you can bring back characters like this. And this is kind of what I appreciate the most sometimes in sequels, is when you can kind of go into the details and dust off something that is familiar, but maybe not so front facing. And I think that the adding him in, you could just tell that King had fun with this. Like, oh yeah, let's use this guy again. You know, he's going to go to the drugstore. Let's do this. Real quick though, on a round robin, is the illness the power of Derry or time? What do you think?
Both, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think both.
Both.
When Jake gets sick.
Yeah.
I think it's time.
Yeah. Okay. What about the influence over Frank Dunning? Is it Derry, or is it Frank is just evil incarnate?
Again, if it had happened during the cycle, I would say it's 100% Derry. But
Yeah.
because we have the similarity with the Corcoran murder, I have to feel like it's not. I have to feel like it's just Frank doing this on his own. And I don't know how much residual nastiness is left in Derry once Pennywise is slumbering. I would imagine it's still there. But I feel like this, because it doesn't happen during the cycle, it has to feel like it is Dunning on himself.
Yeah, I think, what's the line from Ghostbusters where they're like, the building is basically a giant antenna?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel with Derry. I just feel like these people might go far in other towns, but something about being in this town just amplifies everything. There's like a multiplier effect that comes in. So I think he may be bad, but he's predisposed, and then you add in this poisoning effect of the town, and it's going to make it even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like the Marston house too, you know, it's like a battery that kind of charges. And it's also like a fruit of the poison tree thing, like if he had moved out of Derry, he still is from this town where he grew up watching adults not give a shit about stuff, for a variety of reasons. But I think it's both. I think it's kind of that nature nurture thing. It's next to impossible to tease out where exactly the power kind of lies, and it's just kind of a perfect storm of awfulness.
Well, it's telling because he goes to the University of Maine, and life for him seems fairly normal, at least what we get. And then it's only when he returns that things start to sour again. So there is some truth to that. Any other King's Dominion that we have to link in, because there's a lot.
I mean, are we going to talk about all the specific mentions of Derry, like where they go in Derry? Because I got a list. How far are we going?
Go for the list of the things. I have some other stuff that's like that they mention throughout, but you kick this off, because I think that would be good. Yeah.
So obviously, because it's in Derry, that also connects to Dreamcatcher and Insomnia. So we know those characters, and like is Ralph around? Ralph's an older man in Insomnia. Yeah. So where is he here? So they do mention the Bowers roadside produce, right? So we know the Bowers are there. They mention the Barons. They mention Patrick Hocksetter, then Georgie. They mention the clown. They mention the Corcorans, so they know that that's happened. They mention the flood. They mention the sewer. They mention the Tracker brothers, Kitchener Ironworks, Juniper Hill, so Shawshank. So they're throwing them at you every way. And that's the thing is, when I started reading stuff that was connected to the Dark Tower, I didn't realize that pretty much everything's connected to the Dark Tower, because if you mention Derry, this means that all of these other things have happened, or Castle Rock and all of these other things that have happened. So I think Derry having so much influence on King's work really is a brilliant, where he could set this in Castle Rock, right? Like he could go in any of his towns if he wanted to, but I think this one specifically gives you so much view over his entire work.
Well, it also allows being set in this time period, it really allows King to kind of, you're right, like you could assume the idea that like all these characters from his other works are there. Like when he mentions Shawshank, I looked it up, and Shawshank, Rhea Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption takes place in the late 40s, early 50s. So you can conceivably, believe that Red and Andy are still over there in Shawshank. So if like Jake did actually get caught, he'd probably run into them there. Like the idea that story is happening, around the same time it's just fun to think about, in that sense. What other King's Dominion did you all note?
Do we say the Payday Candy Bar?
That's one. Yeah.
I think we mentioned that.
Is that a hook to something else?
Just Harold from the Stand.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a theory about this because of that. So the way that King describes it in this is a King site. The way that he just details the payday, and the fact that he brought it back, and that's the fucking candy bar that Jake polls leads me to think that King's on my team in being that the Payday is the greatest candy bar of all time. You know,
you think it's the greatest candy bar of all time?
I love Paydays. Yeah,
chocolate covered.
It is my go-to candy bar. Yeah,
because the real Payday has no chocolate, right?
Yeah,
it's just
I like the chocolate cover one better, but I like
the chocolate cover one is awesome too. Yeah, but I don't know.
You say one that.
Yeah,
I mean, pretty obvious. There's a bunch of 19 references, but the one that jumped out the most is the Plymouth Fury. The license plate adds up to 19.
Yep.
And one room 237. When he's at the barbershop, the guy they say the 50s version of a fist bump. He goes, "Give me skin, man." And is that a reference to the Wind Through the Keyhole, the Skin Man villain?
Oh, I
think that's reaching, but I like it.
It's also a reference
the same with Skin-Man.
Well, it's what the kids do in Stand By Me also, or in The Body. So which is around this time also, because that's the summer of 59, I believe, in Castle Rock, right? So
just thinking about them all happening concurrently is the delight of it, right? Because I didn't realize when I was a kid reading King that things were connected. So once the dots started to fill in, it's the greatest literary jigsaw puzzle of all time that you get to put the places in at wherever, like willy-nilly, right? You can read them in any order. It's not like you have to go chronologically. So that's the fun of finding it.
Yeah. Jen, did you find any others?
Well, I've already mentioned the Jack Torrance connection, but the sledgehammer and the mallet thing. And then Whoopie Pies, which is more just us Dominion, you know. But then also he calls himself Georgie when he's meeting Bev and Richie. And, like Georgie Dembro. I think that just saying Georgie is a little bit of a nod to like, hey, he's one of us, you know.
What if Richie had been like, oh, we used to know Georgie, who's sort of our friend Bill's brother who got his arm ripped off and died.
But he already knew about that, right? He knows that happened because he goes to the library and researches it, so he should know what happened to George.
It's true.
Well, and I was also thinking if that had been Bill and Bev dancing and he said Georgie, I wonder what kind of where it would have led then, you know.
I've got one. It's a pretty deep one, but Christie's Johnny Depp fixation. By 2011, he had already been in Secret Window, which came out in 2004, King's Dominion. So, let's just say maybe
does Stephen King exist in this universe? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah, right. And I think that maybe King, like Christie, has a little Depp fixation as well. Maybe he likes.
Or maybe Tabby does.
Or maybe Tabby does. Who doesn't? I mean, honestly, I love his old movies a lot. So
Sleepy Hollow is good. I like it.
Yeah. Anything else?
But that doesn't make sense if he knows that Stephen King exists, because then he would know about Derry, right? If Jake read Stephen King, he would know about all of the Pennywise and everything.
Unless he was too consumed with Christie to pay attention.
Or just not that kind of guy. Doesn't read Stephen King.
Maybe he doesn't read Stephen King.
Yeah,
probably just on.
Now, speaking of Johnny Depp, it's like, you don't like Stephen King? Well, you're in one.
Yeah, I mean, that's it for me. I mean, I have some other things that were sort of King sites, like King calls out Purple People Eater and it says it's not a great song, so I imagine he hates that song. There's the whole thing about King talking about like the way that stories can hook us, and like the way that storytellers, all they need to do is tell us what happened and keep telling us what happened next. Like a lot of that leaned to me on writing sort of mantras that he has, particularly like when Jake's talking about with Turcoat, when it doesn't matter what situation you're in, a good story will always hook you, and I love that. Like that's such a cool bit. And then King talks about how, trust me on the sickness, I know. Granted, he's talking from Jake and basically foreshadowing what's to happen, but it did make me wonder if King has a similar sickness going on stage, if he's with the
Rock Bottom Remainders.
Yeah, Rock Bottom Remainders, or if he's on a book tour, or maybe he directed his own school play, or he was in school plays. So we'll have to do an archives episode on that. Did King get sick before his school play?
Hey, if any King podcast is going to do it, it's going to be us.
It's true. Well, if we don't have anything else, I think we can go into our round robin sections. Are we good with that? Yeah. All right. Well, Annie Wilkes just hit me on the head, and now I'm getting a sense of spell of misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away? Slipped away? She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Eddie!
All right, this is a hard section because this is a section where we talk about the things that we didn't like, or maybe had some sort of we winced. Let's say if we winced, even if we winced, it could be in the misery section. We didn't really have much in the last episode. Do we have any in this episode? No,
I have one line that I kind of didn't really like, but
yeah,
it's after the confrontation, and Jake says, "I'll do better next time, Mrs. Dunning. That's a promise." It seemed a little too on the nose.
Yeah, I agree. That was
I like it.
Well, it's also like showing your card, like, you know, I guess he knows that he's going to reset it, so he doesn't care.
Yeah, but I think that would have been implied without having been stated, but it's not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah. I mean, these are all reaching for the most part. I mean, the only one I had was that, like, and I already made a joke of it, was that King can't help but always give his characters like a typewriter or a journal or something like that. Like, he just fucking loves to make them writers. And in this case, I guess it makes sense because King comes up with the idea that like time is, the past is obdurate, and it's certainly blocking any sort of momentum that you want to have. So it's a clever way of him being able to write a character. I mean, this is a guy who made a sniper a writer in Billy Summers. So
right. And that's the thing too, right? You say like Billy Summers writing, that's dangerous as well.
Yeah.
Even if he's not particularly writing about what he's doing, there's still, you're setting yourself up to be caught for that. I feel like it is the same thing here.
Yeah.
Right. But I feel like saying that to Mrs. Dunning makes sense because if she goes forward on this timeline, what just happened with, she will remember he said that, right? The rest of her life, she'll remember that he left and said, I'm going to do better next time, and have to worry about like, what was that? What does that mean? You don't know who this man is. First of all, comes in and saves you. Second of all, he's like, I'll do better next time. And like, what the fuck is that? I think it's neat to put that question mark in her head.
Do you think
it's cruel to put that in her head?
Yeah,
because I think she's never going to know what that means. And even if he does do better next time, it's going to reset her memory. So I don't know. I think that's something that he could have said to himself. He kind of did in a way, but
he could have said it like when he was huffing and bleeding out on the sidewalk and, eating a payday or whatever. Anything else? Jen, no misery, right?
Not really. I do wince every time he talks about Christy, but I don't think it's bad. I think I probably could have lived without the dead hooker in a church pew line.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really have anything.
I guess I'm just very scatologically averse. I don't like to read about it. I don't like to think about it. I don't like to talk about it. Like,
That's
it's
fair.
just, if we could remove it from humanity, I would be very happy. So listening to and I feel like King always really specifically describes it. And I'm like, please don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get it. He's sick. Like, you don't need to go into the whole shebang of it. But I feel like he can't help himself. I think he gets delighted by those.
I am obsessed with his obsession in this, to the point that was one of the first questions I wrote down for when we were like, we got the confirmation that he was getting, whatever, to talk to us. And I was like, oh, we have to ask him about his scatological obsession. And I think all the rest of them were like, all right, sure, whatever. And I think it's one of his own horrors is that, like, and we talked about this on the Dreamcatcher episode. It's just the idea that when the body, turns on you, it's all bets are off again. It's like there's nothing you can do about it. And there's nothing more horrifying about your body betraying you. Having said that, he still, as you said, Julia, it takes much delight in describing it to the point that we've created a section for it, which we'll get to soon. But before we do that, we got to steal the old typewriter from Jake because we're entering the word processor of the gods.
And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
All right. This is where we just talked about, the stuff that made us wince. Let's read some sections that made us go, these are great line, King. Great writing, incredible writing. So Jen, what was a section that had you oof, I could tattoo this maybe.
Tattooed on my face. Oh my gosh, so many. I think I really like my favorite one. Hold on, I'm trying to find it on page 145. I love when he leaves Bev and Richie.
That's mine too.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, I'll let you read that and then I'll skip to another one. Okay. So I love, we kind of already hinted at it on page 120 when he first sees Mr. Keene. Hold on. There it is. No. This is when he's driving to Derry. Sorry.
Oh,
And
yeah. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned it earlier, but it's just such a pleasant day darkened by the Derry thunder. In Augusta, I stopped long enough to haul the top down. In Waterville, I grabbed a fine meatloaf dinner that cost 95 cents, apple pie a la mode included. It made the fat burger look overpriced. I hummed along with the Skyliners, the coasters, and the Dell Vikings, the elegance. The sun was warm, the breeze ruffled my new short haircut, and the turnpike, nicknamed the mile-a-minute highway according to the billboards, was pretty much all mine. I seemed to have left all my doubts of the night before sunk in the cow tank, along with my cell phone and futuristic change. I felt good until I saw Derry. I think that's just
so good.
Perfect. It's like that little King foreshadowing, but just and we know Derry, and if that's like the first mention of it, just perfect.
Yeah. Julia.
So mine's when he's leaving Bev and Richie dancing. He says, humans were built to look back. That's why we have a swivel joint in our necks. I went half a block, then turned around, thinking they would be staring at me, but they weren't. They were still dancing, and that was good.
I love that.
It gives me goosebumps just to read it.
I know, it's so
I
good.
really do. I really do have goosebumps. Like it's so plain and simple and gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, when we were talking about Derry earlier, I think we mentioned if this was in a cycle and if it could have been done when Pennywise had not been defeated yet. And I'm kind of glad that it's not, because I love just this reassurance that these characters, like you said, they're still dancing. They're doing okay. We know they're in for some dark shit down the road, but for right now, because I don't think he could have come back into Derry without getting pulled into the It story. And I just love, because I worry about these characters, you know, and I feel they feel real, and I love them. I just love seeing them in a happy moment.
I tend to go toward like the pithy comedic ones, and I did like when there's the butcher sign. It says Frank Dunning, head butcher. Sometimes life coughs up coincidence no writer of fiction would dare copy. Even though that's kind of what King
exactly what he's
saying.
saying.
Yeah.
And then I like when Frank, because they're trying to show him as kind of a jerk, and he's like, "Do you know what the problem is with German baloney?" "No," she said, dragging it out a little so it became no. The other ladies twittered in anticipation. Dunning's eyes flicked briefly to me and saw nothing to interest him. When he looked back at Mrs. Levesque, they once more picked up their patented twinkle. "An hour after you eat some, you're hungry for power." Just
I just think that was funny.
Joke.
Yeah.
That I think is funny because especially how charming he is, you know, that he could pull it off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One last
go
one.
for it. Yeah, go for it.
I only wrote down 3. Oh yeah, so when he gets the TV, it kind of makes sense, but he's like, "There's nothing like TV when it comes to eroding a regional accent." I thought that was kind of a funny observation.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He's good with those. Look, I got to mention it. We finally get Halloween Story going from King. We did a whole fucking list on this. Julie, I think you're on that episode, right?
I am.
We talk about we basically trying to have makeshift conversations about, or like makeshift stories to double as Halloween stories that you can read in October. But
he really needs to write a book just set on Halloween.
I know, this section right here. It's very small. We get enough though, but it's on page 190. I put it into the bag with the other stuff, mostly for good luck, then got out, locked my car, and set out for Wymore Lane. I passed a few mommies and daddies trick-or-treating with children too young to be out on their own. Carved pumpkins grinned cheerfully from many stoops, and a couple of stuffed straw hat-wearing dummies stared at me blankly. I walked down Wymore Lane in the middle of the sidewalk as if I had every right to be there. When a father approached, holding the hand of a little girl wearing dangly gypsy earrings, mom's bright red lipstick, and big black plastic ears clapped over a curly-haired wig, I tipped my hat to Dad and bent down to the child who was carrying a paper bag of her own. "Who are you, honey?" "Annette Funigello," she said. "She's the prettiest Mouseketeer, and you're just as pretty," I told her. Now what do you say?" She looked puzzled. So her father leaned over and whispered in her ear. She brightened, no smile. Trick or treat. Right, I said, but no tricks tonight, except for the one I hope to play on the man in the basement. I took a payday from my bag. I had to paw past the gun to get it and held it out. She opened her bag and I dropped it in. I was just a guy in the street, a perfect stranger in a town that had been beset by terrible crimes not long ago, but I saw the same childlike trust on the faces of both father and daughter. The days of candy doctored with LSD were far in the future, as were those of do not use if seal is broken. I just being in that, like, I love looking at vintage Halloween stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So I just imagine like all the when people actually used to make their Halloween costumes homemade, as opposed to just, going and buying something in a bag. I don't know. It was fun to see that, and just the image of those vintage style pumpkins staring down. I liked being in that moment.
But also, we have to think about. Oh, I'm sorry, John.
It's very Chris McNeil walking down the street in The Exorcist.
Yeah. Oh,
just a
absolutely.
moment of Halloween.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Tony.
Well, we have to think about in 1958, he's giving her a full-size candy bar, which is great, right? Because now kids drive to the rich neighborhoods so you can get the full-size candy bar. But back then, there's no fun size. You're only getting full-size.
Yeah.
So there was a day where that was the thing. And then we got tricked into getting smaller and smaller candy by capitalism.
That is true. And I wonder if part of the allure of trick-or-treating back then was to get there fast, to make sure that you got their supply, right? Because if you only are buying full, I mean, hey, if they're giving candied apples, I'm all in. But regular apple, no thanks. I can get that at the market. So I thought it was nice and enchanting to finally get some Halloween from King. Any other enchanting passages you want to highlight? No? All right.
I can. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go for it.
I have a lot in the cemetery, but I love on page 132 when he talks about dressing in a clown costume.
Yeah, you get away with a lot.
Yeah. Nobody knows. Hold on. Okay. Well, that's the thing about dressing up in an outfit, isn't it? His smile is gone. Now he looks pale and grim, like everyone else in Derry. In other words, when you put on a clown suit and a rubber nose, nobody has any idea what you look like inside. It's such a cool little nod to Pennywise, but it's also super creepy.
It is super creepy, Jen. It kind of, sends a shiver down my spine. And I don't think that's out of the question, because we are, after all, walking into this cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond the pet cemetery ain't human at all.
All right. I think there's a lot of cemetery here. I mentioned earlier that we would go scope wild and read as many quotes as we want, but this episode certainly went longer than I expected. And now we're approaching the 3-hour mark, which I said was definitely not going to happen. So to save all your time, let's keep it to one piece of cemetery each. I think one good scare is all we need from each of us. So, Flieger, you kick it off.
I just think the whole sequence of Dunning attacking the family.
I
mean, it's pretty horrific to have little girl being sledgehammered. And I thought it was interesting that the weapon they used to stop him is a bayonet, because that's a weapon from yesteryear.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes back in time to prevent a past crime, and then the crime gets prevented with a weapon from about 20 years before this, from either World War I or World War II. So I thought that was kind of a fun little piece.
That is cool. Yeah, I didn't think
about
of it that
27 years.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask a question though? So what do we think happens to Bill? Does he survive? Does he get charged with crimes? I know everything will reset when Jake goes back, but in this timeline going forward, because we kind of don't get that.
Seemed like he had kind of a doomed existence, a bit of a tragic character, so I can't imagine it worked out.
I would like to think that he finally gets justice for his sister and nephew, and that maybe they dig up the bodies now that there's finally evidence that Frank Dunning is an asshole.
But murder's still murder, right? Even if you're doing it for revenge, you're still killing somebody.
Especially because you have the motive.
And without him, would Jake have failed completely?
I think so.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of why didn't you move faster sort of moments in this, but I think I just have visualized this entire sequence to be kind of like the lunch at the Gotham Cafe, where it's just guy just comes in raving and like just
I don't know
nuts.
what that is. What is
that? That's the short story that's in Everything's eventual.
Yes.
Yeah. And he just it's such a strange story, but it's just the maitre d' that goes fucking nuts and starts killing everyone or trying to kill everyone. And I just imagine that's what it was like, this blitzkrieg of energy that was coming in. But I have to imagine if the cops come, they see all these people dead, the mother survives so she can give an account of what happened, especially since she's injured. Could say, hey, this guy saved us. The only question is, what the fuck were you doing walking around with a bayonet? And I mean, it is Halloween, so you could say
brother-in-law too. So it's like the cops are going to be like, there's too much of a coincidence of him to just be here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he goes to Shawshank though. I think I don't know if he dies either.
I feel like there is the light in Bill in this sequence.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if anybody's being helped by the turtle, it's Bill right here, because I feel like he's someone who really doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And the fact that he chose to be there the same night that Jake, when he's had 20 years to do it, and why this specific time, it can only be so he can help Jake. So I feel like if that's a way for the turtle to like give him a little push of help.
Yeah. Maybe the turtle can like wind up in court and be like, it's like
no, he can't. Turtle can't help us. We know this.
Mature into the stand.
Lawyer turtle.
Yeah, Jen. We have the same one.
We might, but I've got another one, so you can.
Oh, okay.
You can
Well, I
read
mean,
that
if you want to go for it, we could just do a shared cemetery, but because it's a really good passage, but it's long, but I think it's worth doing. So, why don't you read it? Why don't you have a better reading voice, so go for it.
Oh, well, okay. So you're talking about page 178.
Yeah.
Okay, and
like
then
178, 179, I think it's around there. But
179. Yeah,
okay.
And then a little on 180. Okay, so I even began to question Beverly Marsh's assertion that the bad times were over, and imagined on nights when I couldn't sleep that there were quite a few of those, that she questioned it herself. Hadn't I glimpsed a seed of doubt in her eyes? The look of someone who doesn't quite believe but wants to, maybe even needs to. Something wrong, something bad. Certain empty houses that seem to stare like the faces of people suffering from terrible mental illness.
Oh, it's such a scary line.
Like Neibolt Street.
Exactly, yeah. An empty barn on the outskirts of town, the hayloft door swinging slowly open and closed on rusty hinges, which I thought maybe the girl hanging from the, what's the story? The last rung on the ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah. First disclosing darkness, then hiding it, then disclosing it again. A splintered fence on Cosset Street, just a block away from the house where Mrs. Dunning and her children lived. To me, that fence looked as if something or someone had been hurled through it and into the barrens below. An empty playground with the roundy round slowly spinning, even though there were no kids to push it and no appreciable wind to turn it. It screamed on its hidden bearings as it moved. One day I saw a roughly carved Jesus go floating down the canal and into the tunnel that ran beneath Canal Street.
Ugh.
It was 3 feet long. The teeth peeped from lips parted in a snarling grin. A crown of thorns jauntily askew circled the forehead. Bloody tears had been painted below the thing's weird white eyes. It looked like a juju fetish. On the so-called kissing bridge in Bassey Park, amid the declarations of school spirit and undying love, someone had carved the words, "I will kill my mother soon," and below it someone had added, "Not soon enough, she is full of disease." One afternoon, while walking on the east side of the Barrens, I heard a terrible squealing and looked up to see the silhouette of a thin man standing on the GS and WM railroad trestle not far away. A stick rose and fell in his hand. He was beating something. The squealing stopped, and I thought it was a dog, and he's finished with it. He took it out there on a rope leash and beat it until it was dead. There was no way I could have known such a thing, of course, and yet I did. I was sure then, and I am now. Something wrong, something bad. And then on the next page, I don't know for sure, but I can tell you one more thing. There was something inside that fallen chimney at the Kitchener Ironworks. I don't know what, and I don't want to know, but at the mouth of the thing, I saw a heap of gnawed bones and a tiny chewed collar with a bell on it, a collar that had surely belonged to some child's beloved kitten. And from inside the pipe, deep in that oversized bore, something moved and shuffled. "Come in and see," that something seemed to whisper in my head. "Never mind all the rest of it, Jake. Come on in and see. Come in and visit. Time doesn't matter in here. In here, time just floats away. You know you want to. You know you're curious. Maybe it's even another rabbit hole, another portal. Maybe it was, but I don't think so. I think it was Derry. In there, everything that was wrong with it, everything that was askew, hiding in that pipe, hibernating, letting people believe the bad times were over, waiting for them to relax and forget there had ever been bad times at all. I left in a hurry, and to that part of Derry, I never went back.
I reread that section, I think like 4 or 5 times on this reread.
So good.
It is so good.
Oh.
It reminds me a lot of the opening for Tales from the Dark Side. Just this like sunny area that turns dark when you look at it close enough. And which is, hey, I guess technically King's Dominion, because I think the Cat from Hell and Where Precious for the Gods are in that. But I love that whole long stretch. It's like his own walking tour. And so it's just, those images haunt me so much because there's so much that you can put into them. And so that was one of the scariest cemeteries I think we've read in a long time in here. So any other cemeteries that you want to highlight?
I just wish that he had been there in time to save Tugga.
I know.
That makes me very sad, because he has the moment where he sees Frank coming in and he doesn't shoot immediately.
Yeah.
And if he had just shot immediately, everything would be okay. And so it makes me so sad. Even if the mom got their arm broken, like, okay, I can deal with that. But just having to watch that kid get his, and read about his face getting smashed in is horrific.
Because they say
it doesn't seem like a Pennywise thing, right? It's not like this monster who's coming to kill. It's your dad doing that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so awful. I pulled that too, because it starts with him like saying, "Daddy, I'm going to shoot you," and kind of running into Jake, and then his brother's head getting split open. I also want to point out but the nice man had cold eyes. There's a longer passage, but I just love that. And how heartbreaking is it that Bev still thinks of him as a nice man, given what we know about her. And we know she's going to turn out okay, but and I also love the part where he can't find the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And he's like, what if this was all an illusion? What if I've been George Amberson the whole time? Which I think is so chilling. It's not really scary, but it's just like unnerving.
Yeah. The only other one I had was like early on, he observes across the street that the yellow man's like swaying back and forth. Like that's or the orange card man. Yeah. Orange card man at that point. The fact that he's just kind of like bobbling back and forth like a character in like a 16-bit game or or it's just an NPC.
Well, it's like a
waiting for his master.
Stunned,
yeah.
Waiting to get fatality'd.
It's so creepy though. Just that he does a lot of peripheral horror in this section that really is affecting.
It feels to me like he's waiting for instructions.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is creepy. That's just and no one cares. Like no one seems to notice, which is the MO
people
for
don't
everyone.
really pay attention to winos, right?
That's true.
That's always the point of them, is that you just you just walk by and you don't pay attention.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of the genius part of having this character be that, because people would leave him alone.
Yeah.
They aren't going to be over like, what are you doing here? The kind of stuff. It's just, all right, he's over by this weirdo, mill, and we just let him go.
Well, that's a creep. Who cares? Yeah. All right, it's time for some pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin. Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Not a ton, and certainly not the literal pound cake that we'll get soon. But
I know. I wish I was here for the sexy bits.
I know.
There's no sexy bits in this section.
There's gonna be soon, but instead there are the stuff that you don't really like, which is your misery, Julia, is unfortunately some people's pound cake, which is the most disgusting thing I could think of right now. But it's just gross because it reminds me every time we get to these like scatological parts, it reminds me of in Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, when she brings him like a cake. She brings Deuce's father a cake in the bathroom, and he's like just cleaning the toilet, and then he just puts his fingers into the cake and eats it or whatever. And it's just like, I feel like that's the image I get when we talk about the more scatological aspects of the pound cake section. Anyway, I got a few, but Jen, do you have any?
I don't, other than just the pooping. And I also learned that there's a difference between incontinence pants and adult diapers.
Yeah, what is the difference? One's for pee and one's for everything?
I think one is for maybe accidental and one is for full release.
Jesus.
Trying to think of a better way to phrase that, not to offend.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Leaks and the spills. Yeah.
You got some
intentional spills.
Fleer?
I just had one. You guys got the rest, but when they're describing some of the women at the bar, they describe her as having teacup breast.
Yeah.
I never heard that term before.
On page 108, says the restroom was clean but smoky smelling. There was an urn-style ashtray beside the commode. From the number of butts sitting in it, I would guess a good many visitors to this tidy little room enjoyed puffing as they pooped. I just imagine he loved the alliteration of that, the puffed and the poop thing, but that was fun.
Then you're touching your cigarette while you're touching. It's going in your mouth. That you also your hands are going
gross
places.
For a lot of reasons.
It's gross. Page 181. In 1958, the heyday of James Mansfield, full breasts are considered attractive rather than embarrassing. Is that true? I don't know. Is it?
Well, breasts were always kind of embarrassing, and I mean, until you got to a point where you could really, we're talking about like 70s, 80s, where you could really like get them out there.
Yeah.
Because in the 50s, even though because you think about Marilyn Monroe, right? But all she's thinking of, or James Mansfield, you're just thinking of her as a sex symbol. That's all she is, right? She's not human. She's not a female. She's not a person. She's just this body. So I think looking at it that way, and that's the only kind of slightly sexy reference we get is that she has big boobs. And as someone with big boobs, I'm not embarrassed, but it's also 2023. So, things are different.
Yeah. The only other one I have is on 185. My stomach took another giddy heave just as my bowels began to work again. There's only one thing to do, and I did it. Leaned forward and vomited into the sink. It went on like that until noon of Halloween day. By then, both of my ejection ports were producing nothing but watery gruel. Yeah, all right, that's enough. But so that's just
thanks for that.
He just loves. I'm sorry.
Ejection ports, man. That's just.
Well, the good news is that none of us are sick. We're all good.
Knock on wood.
No, knock on wood. But we're not sick. We might have a minor head wound or two, but we got to get out of town. We got to get back to Lisbon Falls, and we have to get through. I'm just going to keep calling it the Thinny. I'm sorry. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it the Thinny. The Thinny by the dry shed. We got to get back because we've reached the end. We're not doing our final thoughts. That's like last time I said, that's 4 episodes down the way. And remember, this is a marathon. It's not a race. We're actually pacing this out a lot like Jake is in 1958 for Frank Dunning. So what is next? Well, next Friday, we're back with our 3rd episode, Living in the Past, which sees us losers going on a real road trip in the 50s. We're going real far on that one. So look forward to that, and bring some reading materials if you can actually read in the car. I can't, so I just will lean on music. Who will be joining us? Maybe riding even shotgun? You're going to have to tune in to find out. Julia, tell us what you've got coming up next, because this isn't the only podcast you're a part of.
No, that's true. I have 3. So this is, I'm also on Horror Movie Survival Guide, which you can find anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn how to survive a horror film, we have over 300 episodes, so you can really dive deep in there. I also have a podcast called Jodorowsky. That's all about Alejandro Jodorowsky and his works. And then I have my Stephen King Dollar Baby, I Know What You Need, which is, I know you guys think that I've been talking about this movie for a long time, but this is how movies work.
Yeah.
I started thinking about this movie in 2019, and it is now 2023, and it is still going through the film festival circuit and will be into late next year. So it's a long process. If you'd like to talk to me about my Dollar Baby and how you could watch it, message me and on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Julia C. Marchesi. I can maybe make it happen.
Well, let's just say I have an idea. Then I'll talk to you right after this, and maybe the losers will, the fellow listeners will actually hear about. But we've got some ideas kicking around, and one of them just came to mind. But that's exciting. And again, just you'll have to stay tuned on whether or not that's going to happen. Jen, you've got just as many podcasts as Julia at this point. So.
Yeah, it feels like a billion some days. You can find me also co-hosting The Girls on the Boys, which is a podcast with fellow loser Rachel Reeves about the boys, and also White Ladies in Crisis about erotic thrillers and sometimes 80s aerobics, but also The Lady Killers, which is a new podcast on the Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network, where we talk about female killers in horror. We just dropped our episode on The Craft, and we've got one about St. Maud coming up, and we're going to record on Ready or Not pretty soon. So
nice.
Lots of fun stuff in store.
Flieger, what do you got going, and when are we going back to Midworld?
Well, let me say right now, it sounds like Blaine the Mono is going because my radiators are jiggling around if you can hear that.
That sounds like a pain, Dan.
It is. It sounds like cobras hissing or a train. But I would just recommend, we dropped it on the main feed, the Nightmares in the Sky.
Oh, yeah.
Coffee table book about gargoyles that Caffrey and I recorded a few years ago. And I just re-listened to it. It's really fun.
It's a great episode.
I think a lot of the Dark Tower detour kind of stemmed from that, because that was our first episode of just me and Caffrey doing it solo on kind of a strange book. So check it out.
Yeah, I really love that episode, and I love some of the segs that you get into, especially with just obviously the coffee table discussion from Seinfeld, which I had to make into a meme just to promote it and all. But yeah, I mean, that's what's so much fun, is when you get those unlocked episodes in the main feed, and we try to bring as many sweet treats to you on the main feed as possible. But if you don't want to wait, you can get even more, including the Dark Tower Detour, by joining our Patreon, The Barons, www.patreon.com/The Barons. I mean, I said it millions of times on this podcast, but it's hundreds and hundreds of hours. You also get some really cool special events that are online or even live sometimes, where we have a 24/7, 365 Discord where you can talk to King fans just like you about this episode, about anything random. I mean, they really do just talk about everything at this point. I'm always marveling at the myriad discussions that are popping up left and right, even if they have nothing to do with King. So if you want fellow losers to speak to, your friends for life, you know, like in the body, go join us. You can chat around, and you can also chat with us. We pop in there all the time. Sometimes at 4 a.m. if I come back home from being out, I'll stumble on the Discord and say stupid shit. But that's the fun stuff you're missing. But at the very least, you should definitely be following us on socials for any updates. That's Instagram, Twitter, or X. Gotta get used to saying that.
Nobody calls it X.
Yeah, no, nobody does. It's a bullshit name.
My X.
Yeah, my X. Or you could follow us on Facebook, where you'll never see any of our posts because the algorithm dictates that they just only share the dumbest shit ever. And give us some bright red Pennywise, clown noses. We're two episodes deep into this. And actually 3 episodes if you're counting the incredible interview with Brendan James that Randall just did last week. We've just got one more coming up. We still have to place the date for that, but know that that's going to round all this out to 8 episodes. So that means you're already 3 in. I think we're doing a pretty good fucking job. And this episode is pretty good. Give us some clown noses to appreciate it. It's the season of giving, or the season of, it's still the season of giving. Thanksgiving, you're thanking people for giving. And then you're giving in December. So I think it works. Anyway, before I ramble on and make this a 4-hour podcast, I just want to thank Charlie Lawrence of the Most for our excellent theme song, The Friend Song, which you find on Spotify or Bandcamp. Go to Bandcamp, support the band. And I got to thank our trusty editor, Kyle Rozovich, who is working overtime, making sure we get this series done. And then also all the accompanying bonus content that we're going to be putting on our Patreon. But at the very least, he always keeps us along the beam. Speaking of which, we'll be seeing you back on the beam in 2 minutes, or for us time travelers, over long days
and
pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. Tune in next week. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.